Greetings, citizens, and welcome to another adventure of the reelcomicheroes podcast. My name is Travis.
And I'm Patrick.
And I'm Andy from Holy BatCast.
Welcome.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you guys for having me.
Absolutely. Every episode, we drift through space reviewing geeky movies in chronological order and try not to get killed by xenomorphs, which can only mean one thing. We're talking about aliens. You can find our list of reviews over at reelpodcastnetwork.com. And like Patrick said, welcome, Andy.
Thanks, guys. Ready to talk some aliens. I'm down for this.
Nice. We like to kick the show off with just talking about our history with aliens, and we like to make the guests go first. So, Andy, what is your history with aliens?
All right, great. Well, I mean, I can tell you, aliens was a mainstay in my childhood. In the mid 80s, when aliens was new, we at home, we didn't all have very extensive collections of movies. We only probably just had a few. And so me and my family, we had a handful of VHS tapes, and that included Ghostbusters and Lethal Weapon 2 and Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, I think Sleeping Beauty, but one of those tapes we had was Aliens. And so like in our very limited library of what we could watch on a daily basis, Aliens was one of those movies. And then me and my siblings, we just loved Aliens. And so we watched it continuously as kids all the time. We were obsessed with it. We watched it every couple days. We quoted it. We knew it by heart. We all had our favorite Marines. We pretended to be them. I feel like we drew pictures of them as if they were superheroes because we loved the characters so much.
Nice.
And so Aliens was just something that was always there as kids. And so when you guys were nice enough to invite me on the show and gave me some movies to choose from, I saw Aliens. I'm like, oh God, Aliens. It's just, at this point, it's comfort food. It just, I just love it that much. And then, as I grew up, I saw it less because, well, I started buying more movies. And so I had more options, but it's one of those things where, as soon as the box set came out on DVD, I bought it, revisited it, and I'm like, God, I forget how good this movie is. And then the Blu-ray set came out, and I bought it, and I revisited it, and I'm like, it's still so good. And then last year, now it's been like a year and a half, on one of the podcasts I do, Real Fans for Real Movies, we did a 30th anniversary look back at Aliens, and so it was really fun to revisit it and break it down at that point. So it's a movie that I've continuously gone back to. It's a movie where I think it's arguably the high point of the franchise, and it's a movie I just have a lot of nostalgic love for because of how much I loved it as a kid. But even revisiting it as an adult and bringing it down as a film, I'm continually impressed by how well it holds up and how well it's thought out and constructed. I just think it's just one of the best sci-fi action horror movies you could ever imagine.
Awesome.
Nice. I can't say I have the same amount of history. Sadly.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. Patrick, you were saying on our last episode that you had never seen Aliens.
Yeah. Yeah.
So slightly different ends of the spectrum.
Yep.
Well, that'll be fascinating though to see if you agree that it holds up so well, because obviously I'm coming in a little biased.
Yeah, because it came out in 86, so a little being 5, it wasn't exactly in my wheelhouse. So
I was only 8.
Yeah, okay.
But my parents didn't care what we watched. We just watched whatever we wanted.
Gotcha. Yeah. I never really got around to it. I just I mean I knew it through just pop culture in general, like the exosuit lifter thing that she battles with, and that scene where she's holding Newt in the midst of the eggs from the cover art. So I knew like bits and pieces, and I knew she was a badass from just looking at snippets and sort of homages throughout other films. But yeah, this was my first end-to-end viewing of Aliens, and it did its best to live up to Starship Troopers, but no, I'm just kidding. I immediately thought of Starship Troopers with this,
Yeah.
like because they're basically playing off a similar story, with space marines and bugs and all that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was. I'll get into it once we start talking about it. But it was a fun little surprise.
Right on.
What about you, Travis?
I have vague memories of seeing certain frames of this as a kid. Like I think I remember seeing Newt, in the water. Or I remember like going over to someone's house and their kids were watching this, and like my parents didn't feel comfortable like letting me watch it or something. Like maybe I was too young for, I guess, some of what was going on or whatever. So I have very vague memories of bits and pieces of it like that. And then I probably didn't watch this until somewhere around 2003, 2004. I remember my wife and I got like advanced tickets to go see Aliens versus Predator, or like whichever the first, Alien versus Predator movie came out. And neither of us had really had a lot of, I had seen Predator for sure. And I think we sat down and watched Predator and Alien, and then saw, Alien versus Predator. And then I think I went back and watched like the rest of the franchise. So, I mean, even that's going back, a little more than 10 years. And then I might have watched Aliens once or twice more since then. But basically going into this, it's like, maybe second or third viewing for this podcast. So not a lot of history, but I kind of still understand all the references and the pop culture stuff, especially with, all the lines from, Bill Paxton's Hudson are timeless. So a lot of that stuff I'm familiar with, but yeah, not an extensive past with this movie.
I still say Starship Troopers was better. I'm just kidding.
Oh.
My favorite movies are Starship Troopers and Spaceballs. I don't care what anyone says. I just like spoofs of good movies.
Right.
Starship Troopers is great. I'm not gonna fight you on that. It's great. It's just a very different tone and approach than Aliens. But I remember when that movie was coming out, I was like, that looks so stupid. And then I went and saw it and I was like, that was awesome. Never mind. I didn't know what I was talking about.
Okay. So we want to get into taglines?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. Only got 4, so hallelujah. We got I only really like one of the 4, so I'll let you guys decide. We got This Time There's More. No joke.
Wow.
This Time It's War. Pretty uninspiring.
Yeah, that's the one I'm familiar with.
Yeah, I remember that.
There are some places in the universe you don't go alone. And
that's not bad.
Yeah. Somewhere in deepest space, all hell is breaking loose.
There's a 5th one that I coined last night, and is in space, no one can hear you eat Ripley's cornbread.
Nice.
Because she don't like the cornbread either.
Wow. Oh man, we're gonna hit some deep cuts with you, I think.
Come on, the cornbread line. It's iconic, damn it.
Right. Everyone references it.
Yeah.
Well, me and my friends do.
Jeez. Yeah, see, I think you're gonna have those little pieces that pass me by. Like I got the game over, man, obviously, but I don't think I got the subtle lines that you get from watching it over and over again. That's good though. I like that. So, Travis, you want to go into the first act?
Yeah, the act breaks. We've got Act 1 ends with Ripley and the Space Marines dropping onto LV-426. Act 2 ends with Burke's betrayal being revealed. And then Act 3 begins with the survivors basically, what do we say, like barricading the compound and kind of preparing for the alien onslaught.
It's that right after the lights go out. Is that what you're getting
Yeah,
at?
yeah.
The power goes out.
Kind
they
of
all
that
go
last
into the room. Right.
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
Okay.
Where things get real right then.
Yeah. Well, all right. Do we want to jump into Act 1 then? I'll kick us off with I'm just continuously impressed by the effects and the work that goes into like the miniatures and the matte paintings in space. I would think, there's a few ship miniatures and then, like I said, the matte paintings that I think at this time in 1986, they've kind of surpassed what they were doing in terms of making space look real. Because we had Return of the Jedi like 3 years prior to this, and I remember they kind of not dropped the ball, but their matte paintings in Jedi looked quite a bit worse for that trilogy. But this really, they've outdone themselves here in as far as that kind of production work. I love the ship design of the. Let's see, do we see? No, we don't see the Sulaco yet, but the gateway, I guess, which is the what do you call it? Like space station. All that stuff looks really great, and really impressed by that kind of work. So
yeah, definitely. I mean, it held up insanely well, I thought.
Yeah,
considering it's 1986.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's just it. For a 30-year-old movie, I feel like 98% of the effects hold up. There are a couple here and there where you go, okay, like that, that's obviously done with what they had at the time. But so much of it, I'm like, I can't believe that's 1986. It looks great. From the ships to space to, as you mentioned, the matte paintings, but just the aliens themselves and the suits and the way they move, all that holds up, I think, beautifully. And I don't know if we don't jump ahead, but like the Queen holds up so darn well. For being a massive puppet. Like huge kudos to James Cameron and his team for creating effects that were timeless and 30 plus years later, I think, remain so.
Yeah, Cameron seems to have a knack for that.
Yeah, right.
I was watching a lot of the kind of behind the scenes stuff, and a lot of the designs were created by Cameron himself, inspired by like a lot of the work that H.R. Giger did, and is it Rob Cobb, who was like production designer on the first Alien. So we kind of took what both of those guys did, and then obviously added, his take on like the futuristic military and all that, but used a lot of like insects for inspiration as far as the alien designs and things like that, especially with the Queen. So it does still look great after all this time. And kind of like what you were saying, Andy, there are a couple things that don't really hold up, and the items for me that kept standing out were the rear projection whenever they'd have like
exactly
when the not helicopter, but that's what I call it, when the helicopter is like exploding, like that doesn't look great. The drop ship,
yeah. That's one of the shots where the crash of the drop ship, where you can tell they're in front of a projected screen, and then when the drop ship actually first is landing down and it's like flying through the clouds. That's one where you're like, like the compositing isn't quite what it becomes later. But it's, I mean, honestly, it's really just those couple instances. And so nothing but credit for having it hold up as well as it does. I know 15-year-old movies that effects don't hold up that well.
For sure.
You mentioned Starship Troopers.
Yeah.
What?
Sorry.
Okay. Let's see. Maybe this is something that our guest can help me with. I had a question on this first act. They're talking about the terraformers, and seems to be a large operation with multiple planets involved.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't recall if the eggs of the xenomorphs don't show up as life forms, like on scans, because it seems odd that they would just drop some people off on a planet and not, search out existing life forms first. So that's what made me kind of wonder if maybe they were sort of, when they're hibernating, they're not visible or something.
That's a great question. I've honestly never thought of it.
Yeah.
But I mean, yeah, I would imagine there's definitely some logic as far as, perhaps it doesn't register while it's in the egg shields it.
Yeah.
Or
I was trying to
those
think back
eggs,
to the first one too.
Yeah, those eggs were in the ship, and so maybe the ship shields it. I don't know. But one thing that I got to say that I love about this movie is I mentioned earlier about how I think the story is just so beautifully constructed and so many questions that you could come up with, you realize that they've already thought of. So I know that as a movie geek, sometimes something that bothers me is just like those really amazing coincidences and sometimes you have to forgive it because it's a movie, but I always like it when a movie tries to avoid just using coincidence as a way to make things happen. And as a kid, I just assume, like there were definitely nuances that I missed because I was 8 years old. And so I just was always like, oh yeah, Ripley wakes up, they do this Inquisition, and wouldn't luck have it that now, now they find the aliens after 57 years on that same planet.
Right.
Not until Ripley wakes up. But now, and again, like maybe some of this is more about the extended cut. It's gotten to the point where I don't remember what was in the original cut because at this point I just know the extended cut. But it's Ripley's waking up is the event that sparks them to go find it, which I love that. Like I loved using her report as a way for Burke to be like, hey, you need to go check out this part of the planet that's miles away that we've never looked at because there might be something worthwhile out there. Not telling them what it is.
Yeah.
Not telling them what it is. And that was in the original because I always remember as a kid him going, it was a bad call, Ripley. It was a bad call. Yeah. But as a kid, I didn't really pick up on what they were talking about. And it was because, so I love the idea of like, no, it's not a coincidence that the aliens show back up once Ripley does. It's Ripley waking up that causes the company to go find the aliens.
Okay,
Of course, for all the wrong reasons. But anyway, it's stuff like that I was like, oh, that's brilliant. I love that. Like so smart.
Oh, you just took my most villainous point of this movie was Ripley waking up.
No. Delete that.
Yeah.
I was getting ready to blame her for this whole damn thing.
Did you guys? Okay, so you guys both watched the 1990 special edition extended version or whatever. I watched the theatrical. So, did your version have a scene with, I guess, people in the colony in the control room saying, we've got orders to go research this area, and then it cuts to like Newt and her family?
Yeah, that is definitely extended, not theatrical. Yeah, that I totally remember because as a kid, like again in the theatrical, you don't meet Newt until
47 minutes, like.
And in the extended, you get to see what the colony is like, fully functioning, A-okay, everything's fine. You get to see the before instead of just the after.
Yeah.
And then, so you get that contrast with the extended, whereas with theatrical, you just get to see what happens after it's been wiped out.
Yeah. Okay. I wasn't sure because that was one of the deleted scenes that I watched, and then it ends with like Newt's dad coming back to their little salvaging vessel with the facehugger on.
Yeah.
So
right, and that's a perfect example of where you get more of that context of like you get those guys talking of, hey, someone from the company called us and told us to go check this out, and at that point it's left very vague.
Yeah.
And you just were in a room full of 8 stuffed shirt jackasses who
right.
So like any of them could have been at that point, at least for me, I didn't think it would be Burke. But you at least get more of that context of what's going on, of we're going to check it out instead of asking for details because they're just going to tell us not to ask anyway.
Yeah. Okay. I love her nightmare scene. It's perfect because it starts with learning about how long, where she is, and then it just turns hellish, with her obviously going through the pains of the chest burster and everything and saying, kill me. So I like that she's clearly reliving part of the nightmare and then waking up, when it all goes bad and everything. And I love just we get to see another chest burster scene. It's just so great from the original Alien.
One thing that I think is so interesting about that scene is it's half dream, half not, because the first part of that sequence really happened,
right? Of
her meeting Burke and finding out how long she's been asleep and everything. But then at a certain point, it becomes the dream. I always thought that was really, I don't know if confusing is the right word, but it's they're giving you both at that moment, which is a little tricky.
I think it does do a nice job of it kind of blends into a dream without a cut, I guess, without a stark transition or whatever.
Exactly.
And then I think it feels like she, obviously later on she has nightmares and after the Inquisition, and then that's part of what kind of triggers her to call Burke and say, I'm going. It starts off partly because she wants the nightmares to end. I mean, obviously I think the main impetus for her to go back is once she learns that there are families there are children there, so that obviously triggers her. But I do think it's partly because she's been having nightmares every night since she came out of that cryo sleep. So
well, yeah, I mean, and she's a mess at this point. She can't, she's lost everything.
Yeah.
And which I think is another really just a great stroke of genius of a way to set up this movie and make it really compelling before you ever meet an alien is she wakes up 57 years later and everything she knows is different and everyone she knows is gone. And that's already this, woman out of time instead of the man out of time. So that already puts the character in a very interesting and precarious situation. And then the company turns its back on her and says, we're revoking your license, and throws her to the wolves, as she says herself. So she's got nothing to hold on to other than these really painful memories. And so she's glad they're going to go try to help these colonists. But her first reaction is, that's not my problem. I can't help you. I'm not going back out there. But she's carrying this trauma with her where she can't even live. So yeah, she gets to the point where she's it could be the only way to be okay is to go face these demons that now I'm carrying with me.
Yeah, I was kind of with her with the whole no freaking way am I going with you, because I mean, she barely escaped the first time. I mean, what sways her really to go? Is it that she thinks the Marines are actually going to be able to handle this thing? Because it doesn't seem like it. I'm looking for closure, basically, but
yeah. I mean, I think that's it. Is and he even, Burke is masterful in the way he manipulates her with listen, this is a second chance for you. The company will reinstate you. You'll at least have, you'll at least regain some of what you lost as far as career and what your place in the world. Because he says something about oh, it's the only work you can get. It's great. There's nothing wrong with that. He's being nice, but it's like a backhanded compliment, right?
Right. Yeah.
And so so it's they ensure her safety. They're going up fully armed with Marines. So I'm sure she wants to believe them as far as it being safe. And at the same time, she's well, I can't keep living like this. This could be my only chance to recapture something of a life for myself.
I find it a little strange that the plan is for her to go down on the ground with the Marines, and the same with Burke. I guess I would have expected them to stay in orbit and then basically be within radio contact the entire time. So, found that a little strange. But I could, obviously, we need her on the planet itself, for the story to really.
Yeah, I sort of assumed it was hard to get signal there. I mean, even while they're on the ground, it's hard to get signal because they're using 1980s technology.
True. And I guess they kind of explain that with the ground troops can't connect with the the Sulaco, they need that drop ship to maintain contact or whatever. So
Yeah, because isn't the antenna out of whack? Like it got out
on
of
the
alignment or
colony,
something?
yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's sort of what I just chalked it up to. I mean, I did think it was crazy she went so easily, but just because, I mean, is that little transport vehicle really going to keep you safe? And then, we'll get into it in the next act.
Sure.
But I do have to say, in Act 1, my favorite moment is when the sergeant gets out of cryo and pops a cigar in his mouth. I thought that was the best intro to a character. I knew exactly who I was going to be dealing with from that point on.
Yeah.
Everyone else is like,
Apone, he's
shaking.
amazing.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I don't know how we break it up, but a couple things. Like I think that I dubbed it Inquisition. I don't know if that's what we should call it, but the Inquisition scene I think is brilliantly done because it gets you up to speed with if you've never seen the first film. And as an 8-year-old, I had never seen the first film. I don't think I even really understood that there was a first film until years later, because we didn't own that VHS. So I think it's a great way to recap what you should already know if you haven't seen the first movie. It also, I think, is this great commentary on the upper brass of this really profitable corporation and how they miss the forest through the trees and how their priorities are completely out of whack. I think there's some great social commentary there. And it also, I love how it really shows us who Ripley is, because, she's trying to cooperate. And by the end, I think she's so awesome. And then she's like, that will be all this stuff that you think is so important. None of it's going to matter because we're all going to be gone. So already just shows how she will always do the right thing and fight for the right thing, even if it's not appropriate at the moment. So I just think that's a great scene in getting exposition out, but it's also at the same time reflecting like who this character is. So I think that's really well done. And then the other scene that you just mentioned of them all waking up, the Marines waking up, one of my favorite parts in the movie. And again, there's not an alien to be found. But one reason I think this movie works so well is how James Cameron manages to introduce us to a huge amount of characters in a matter of about a couple minutes. And within those couple minutes, we as the audience know who they all are. Because of how they react when they're waking up, how they start interacting with each other. They are very cleverly start dropping each other's names, because then later on when they're exploring and we see all their names on screen, we now know whose point of view we're seeing things from. And I think that's something that this movie, that so many other movies could learn something from, is like, this defines its characters immediately. So you go, oh, Vasquez. I know who Vasquez is. She's that complete badass, and she's best friends with Drake because they do pull-ups together and they've got this camaraderie thing. And Hudson, he's the loudmouth smartass. Okay, I know who he is. Hicks, right? He's one that they kind of poke fun at. Oh, Bishop's like, you immediately start meeting these characters, and it's done so naturally you don't even realize what they're doing until they're all in their gear, which could make it very hard to distinguish between the characters as soon as all these army guys dress up. But because they had that scene, you know who they all are. So I think it's masterfully done. I love it.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
And I remember reading something or watching something on that behind the scenes, and James Cameron talking about how when you watch the first one, it was just scripted as like all these people on this, like basically refinery ship, and they all just have names, and they were written all as male characters. And then when they went to casting, it was, they just decided like, we can make like 2 of these characters female. It doesn't matter. They're just, they're just names. They don't have like, there's no real other information about who these people are. So, it's kind of a similar thing here where you meet all these people in kind of a similar situation as you do in Alien, where they all just wake up, and then kind of slowly you start to find out who they are and what their role is on the ship and everything. So yeah, I like the kind of a similar scene in this one. And then you also mentioned that not knowing that this was a sequel and that there was another, an alien. I love the decision to just simply add an S to the original title, because it not only it sometimes, I think, when you say, if this was called Alien 2, I think sometimes, like especially in the 80s, or sequels can get a bad rap, and especially a numbered sequel like that. I think the same reason that you have Batman Returns instead of Batman 2. Like, I think it's a marketing decision, and it works so perfectly with this, because the first one is just one singular creature that they're dealing with throughout the entire movie. And this one, it's, this time there are many kind of a situation. So it works perfectly, because it also tells you that, there's going to be a lot of these things. So it does a good job of being a sequel, or, being the title for a sequel, but not being a blatant sequel.
Well, and it's such a simple but brilliant move.
Yeah. It wouldn't work for everything, but it works perfectly for this franchise.
Yeah, exactly. Because you're right. Like adding a 2 just feels like a cash in, and it tells you everything you need to know. You're like, yeah, I saw that movie in 1979, and there was one alien, and it killed everybody. What if there were 100 of them?
Right.
Well, damn. Okay. Like it immediately raises the stakes with an S. It's so smart. And you're right. And it allows it to stand on its own a little bit too. As a kid, that worked for me. I was like, oh yeah, aliens. And then like, there's Alien, right? What? No, I didn't know that. You also brought up a really great point about, the characters are written as the characters, and then as even in the first film, they made 2 of them female, and I think James Cameron does that really well in this movie. It's no secret how he loves his badass women.
Yeah.
He was a little ahead of his time as far as that goes, but that's one thing I love is you meet this crew of Marines, and a bunch of them are women.
Yeah.
And they're not really called out. Aside from Vasquez with her back and forth with Hudson, but there's just women that are part of the crew, and none of them are ever sexualized. They're just part of the Marines, and so and you would think it's one token woman, and then the rest men, and no, there's 4 of them, and
Was there 4? Okay,
there's the pilot.
Yeah.
There's one of the other who she's just a foot soldier, and I don't even know her name.
Right.
Then there's Vasquez, and then Ripley, obviously. So, but just the fact that he just mingles them in there without making it a big deal, I thought was, again, for 1986, was a little ahead of its time.
That mystery female, I'm not seeing her in IMDb. I'm assuming Dietrich, that was the pilot, right?
Dietrich, I think, was the pilot.
Yeah. Okay.
And yeah, there's the other one, and she almost acts like the doctor. She's the one who checks out Newt to make sure that she's okay.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
She has really short hair.
Yeah.
And she doesn't get a line. So, we meet a lot of the Marines. She's one that we don't really get a lot of time with. She's just kind of there. But yeah, so I always thought that was kind of cool too.
Cool. Oh, maybe it's Corporal Farrow.
See, I thought that was the pilot.
The pilot. Okay, so maybe Dietrich is the doctor.
Yeah.
Or medic.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Yeah, it's funny. I didn't even realize who were men and women, because it was just chaos. And
yeah.
Like, I totally got confused by the drop zone scene that we'll get to in a bit as to who was where.
Okay.
Like, I didn't realize that those people were not a part of the team going down.
Oh, right.
Like, I thought the whole thing was going to be going down, but then it drops off that little vehicle.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I have a feeling I'm going to learn a lot talking this out. See, do we want to get into how creepy Bishop is?
Go for it.
It's like I'm just wondering, like, I thought it was a really cool scene because I didn't know he was artificial intelligence.
Oh, okay.
Or a synthetic, or whatever you want to call him.
Yeah.
While they were doing the knife scene. So I'm wondering if the guys were messing with Bishop when they put Hudson's hand down there. because didn't Bishop say he's unable to harm a human being?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm wondering what would happen if he accidentally did. Like, would it shut down or short circuit, or would something happen if he did break that law?
Right.
I don't think he could.
Because he did make himself, which was real close to Hudson.
Yeah.
So I was just wondering if they were messing with the synthetic or not. Or maybe it was just with Hudson.
I think it was just with Hudson.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Hudson's such a jackass that I could imagine them being like, we're gonna torture him a little bit.
I was sick of him before.
Yeah. You want to see him do this trick? I mean, you're gonna have to put your hand down too.
You asked for it.
Yeah. I had a question about. So I guess my big question is, how long are they in cryosleep when they leave Gateway to when they all wake up, prior to the mission starting? Like, because I always thought like they were going to be going into this, hibernation for years and years to get where they're going. So
Yeah, because she's still a little girl when they get there, so it can't be that long.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
They never really say. You just kind of imagine that it's a couple weeks or something. Like,
right.
Because I think they were already out of contact with them for some weeks before they even got Ripley on board.
Yeah.
Well, and they say how long Newt's been there, right?
Yeah. What was it?
And I can't remember what it was.
Maybe?
So
Yeah,
so they lost contact, and so it's by the time they find Newt, it had been a few weeks. Like I can't remember the amount exactly, but yeah, you can kind of back it up from there and go, okay, well, Newt's been on her own for a month and a half, and so it took them a week or two to lose contact, a week or two to mount the mission, and a week or two to get up there or something.
Yeah. So then I kind of wonder, like, why even go into hibernation? Why not? But
that's true. Maybe it's a just easier way to travel fast.
Maybe, yeah.
To get all those ultimate badasses their beauty sleep before they have to go be ultimate badasses.
That's how they stay frosty.
That's right.
Who was the guy that was like, "Oh, the floor is cold"?
Oh, I don't know.
Hudson.
Was it Hudson? Okay,
yeah, he's like, "This floor is freezing. You want me to fit your slippers?"
Oh, that's right.
So the badass thing doesn't
Gee, Sarge, that'd be nice. Yeah.
Yeah, Hudson, I would not trust with my life. I'm just saying. And was he like the tech guy? Because he seemed to be the one pulling up like schematics all the time.
Yeah, they kept telling him to interface with computers and this and that. So I guess he's a tech guy.
He's kind of a nerd with a gun.
Yeah.
Cool.
Kind of like what you were talking about a little bit, Andy, with her being, out of time, the woman out of time. She's also that like stranger in a strange land kind of trope, or with her being in and amongst these like Marines on this space station or on this ship, and like no one really seems to like her. They don't treat her with respect or anything, and it's just I feel bad for her when she comes out of sleep and it's just her. And then you do find out that Burke is also there, and so is this lieutenant. So she does have some people that she can kind of relate to, but then all these other Marines, like it's like the Marines and the three, Ripley, Burke, and Gorman, the lieutenant. So it's a uncomfortable relationship between those two groups.
Yeah, and it starts out that way because Vasquez says, "Who's Snow White?"
Yeah.
And they're like, who is this person? Why is she here? Why is she telling us what to do? Like, there's no respect there when it all starts. That starts to build as soon as when she's doing her briefing and they're not taking it seriously, and she gets shitty with them to pay attention, and then it really comes to a head when when stuff goes bad on the mission, which is jumping ahead a bit, but yeah, she has to earn their respect, and she does it pretty darn quickly.
Yeah, I do like Sergeant Apone. I like his reaction when she gets in the loader and kind of shows off her loading skills. And his reaction totally changes, and he's actually really like nice to her for a moment. So I did.
Well,
like
yeah,
that.
and I love that that exchange of her being like, "Listen, I feel worthless. Is there something I can do?" And he goes, "I don't know. Is there something you can do?"
Yeah.
Another great character that you just like he immediately makes an impression, and he's great. Yeah, we were watching that, and my wife goes, "Why do they laugh?" I'm like, "Because they didn't believe her. They didn't think she was they didn't think she was going to be useful, and she can do this stuff." And she's like, "Oh, okay, I got it." But yeah, like she immediately just starts stepping up, and but you're right. Like as it starts, she's completely out of her element. She's not a military person. She's so she's the outsider, and immediately rises to the top and becomes the leader of the whole thing. Because Gorman ain't gonna do it. That guy.
Yeah.
There's a weird line by, I think it's Hudson, and when they're getting like debriefed before they actually start their mission, and he's like, "Oh, it's just another bug hunt," and that line about it being a bug hunt, and then like on the dropship itself, it says like bug stomper, like it makes me wonder what other creatures have they faced before, because I don't think they've seen these xenomorphs before. Like basically nobody has, except for the people that have been killed by them. But I'm really curious to know what other alien creatures are there out there that these guys have hunted and killed before. So it's like a weird little hint at a much bigger, world out there, universe out there.
Oh, totally. It's a great point, actually. I've never given it a heck of a lot of thought, but you're right. Like they kind of imply that they've done this on a smaller scale to the point where they're not even the least bit nervous about it. So they've gone and wiped out a couple little things, and they're like, whatever. It's just going to be a walk in the park.
Yeah, because they're not fazed by the concept of there being this creature, or that they're gonna, going out there and they'll most likely come in contact with them. Like that doesn't faze them. It's because they just think, oh, it's just another, easy mission where we're just gonna take out some type of alien creature. But yeah, I love the implication that these guys have seen other creatures like out there. So I could easily see a spinoff like Space Marines, and it really does kind of flow real like perfectly with the Starship Troopers type movie, and maybe that's what it would be. But
yeah, I imagine they went against more not primitive but animalistic kind of creatures, because they constantly seem thrown off by how smart the xenomorphs are.
Yeah.
So maybe that's why they're not taking it as seriously, because they've never gone up against something
with
quite like this.
Yeah.
Because it's sort of a derogatory term, like stupid bugs. So I'm guessing that's what it is. They're almost like intergalactic pest disposal.
Yeah. All right. I feel like we're getting close to them dropping onto the planet. Any other notes for Act 1?
Well, one other quick thing is when I first saw this movie, if I go back that far, we mentioned the moment where she gets in the loader and she shows that she knows how to handle it. The first time I saw this movie, I never thought twice about that moment of just like, oh yeah, sure, she's just showing that she's capable. Great. And then, of course, after you see the movie, you realize that they're setting up something really awesome and badass.
Yeah.
And again, it's really well done, because I don't feel like they tip their hand here. It's just a moment, and then when it gets paid off later, it just pays off amazingly well. The other thing I think that is great, I talked about introducing us to all these Marines. Another thing that I think that Cameron does beautifully is he highlights all the Marines, or at least, all the ones that have really specific personalities. He highlights them all equally at that waking up scene, and then, waking up, getting dressed, and then eating. Like during that scene, you get to meet all these guys. And at that time, Hicks is just one of many. And they don't give Hicks any additional screen time. They never shine a light on Hicks. He's just another one of the grunts.
Okay,
and
yeah.
so I love that there's a little bit of misdirection there, being like, when you see this movie for the first time, you don't know that Hicks is important because he's just one of them. And then as the movie progresses, you realize how important he becomes. But I love that they don't give that away. He gets probably less screen time than like a Hudson or a Vasquez, but he gets enough screen time where you go, oh yeah, I know who that is. That's the guy from Terminator. His name's Hicks. Like, they give you just enough to know that he's a character, but they don't tell you how important he is, which I think is really smart, because then when they go off onto their mission, all the Marines are on equal footing. So you don't know who's at risk. It could be any of them.
Yeah. I've got some notes on Hicks, but those will come in to play a little bit more towards Act 2. But yeah, I like what you were saying about them showing the Marines kind of gearing up and everything, and that is a sexy gearing up sequence when they're all like loading their weapons and like putting on their gear, and it made me think that like James Cameron was way before there was a Michael Bay, who we've seen enough of his movies that he likes to glorify the military and do like real nice hero shots and really show the military in a very positive light and everything. But Cameron was doing that at least 20 years before Michael Bay got around to doing that kind of stuff, and it's yeah, I really like the scene, especially like when Vasquez is testing out her weapon with the Steadicam arm that they like. Cameron actually used a real camera Steadicam arm and just attached a gun to it. So really, really clever way of creating futuristic tech.
Yeah, and you can tell they had a blast creating that stuff. Creating the guns, creating the loaders, creating the ships and everything, just from a production design standpoint, it's really cool. A friend of mine pointed it out, because I always bring up I've kind of sort of mentioned it here, is I can tell how good this movie is because you don't see an alien for an hour and you don't care. And that's how you know the movie is good. Because other similar movies, at a half hour, 40 minutes, you're like, okay, are we gonna get to the we're gonna get to the monsters, we're gonna get to the action, because I'm Pacific Rim's a good example, where you're like, all right, let's get to some robot and monster fighting, please. Here you don't notice, you just get sucked in. But he brought up a great point of like, he's like, that's true. He goes, however, you are seeing like these really cool ships and this really cool tech, so that probably helps a little bit. I'm like, oh yeah, I guess that's true. I never thought of it that way, because you're getting the setup of the world and what they're working with and everything, which is eye candy in and of itself.
Totally, yeah. And Cameron even said that the design for the Sulaco, like originally, I forget what his name is, Sid something, designed the original Sulaco. It had like a big, like spherical design. It was basically like a life supporting, ship and everything. And Cameron was like, it's nice, but here I want it to look more threatening. I want it to have like a business end. And so he basically said, take the pulse rifle, that the Marines carry, and kind of use that as a design for a ship. So that's how the ship ends up looking. And if you do look at it, it looks like a big rifle.
Wow, I've never thought it, or I've never heard that. That's really cool.
All right, well, I'm ready to take a nap on a dropship.
All right. Hey, do you want is
somebody wake him up?
Yeah. I'm glad. It's impressive to me that they got Lady Gaga to pilot the dropship. Nice. I remember the first time, or a couple years ago, watching this and thinking that it just looks eerily like Lady Gaga when she's got those mirrored sunglasses on. And so I did a search for it. Obviously, it's obviously not her, but that's a common, like, other people have made that connection and pointed out that the pilot looks a lot like Lady Gaga with those sunglasses piloting the dropship. So
I cannot say I had the same epiphany.
No.
Yeah, I didn't think of that, but once you say it, I went, oh, I can
check
see
out
it.
the image of her just piloting the ship, and you'll see it.
Well, we should say that Travis is the treasurer of the Lady Gaga fan club.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
Awesome.
Right.
Awesome.
Always on his mind.
Yeah. Okay, who's got something for Act 2?
This is where I was. We talked about earlier. I was shocked that she was on the ground with the troops. Like at the very least, I thought she'd stay with the ship that dropped off the vehicle that moved on the ground. So I thought she'd be like, within range, but not necessarily physically on the ground. And then the sort of nonchalant, all's clear, really way too quickly.
Well, I also love the setup of Gorman, because Gorman's the one who's guaranteeing their safety. Gorman's the guy in charge. Gorman's the one who's briefing the group. And then as they're doing the drop, they go, "How many is this for you?" And he says 38 simulated. Yeah. And they're like, "Yeah, how many for real? 2, including this one." And so they immediately set this guy up as like, oh, he has not seen a lot of action. Yeah. It's all theoretical for him. And so I love the setting up of his character because that becomes so important later. Yeah, I mean, it is weird that the consultant would go with, but at the same time, if Burke is going with, I think it speaks more to their hubris of how they're like, oh, it's completely safe. We have the ultimate badasses. They're going to go clear things out, and then it's totally safe for the rest of us. So that's why they hang back. I love the ground vehicle that I will call the Aliens Mobile. I love that. I think that's another great design that I always, as a kid, I was like, oh, I want a toy of that. Yeah. But yeah, like it's all clear from Gorman. It's like Gorman he does not know what he is doing. And even Ripley's like, it's not all clear. What are you talking about? So yeah, I think that's, I guess I never had an issue with her going down. I mean, you're right. Like would the civilian go with them? But they thought, oh yeah, she's kept safe until we know it's all clear. And then he prematurely calls it all clear.
Yeah.
And even when stuff does go bad, she is safe until she chooses to go into the fray. Because even when stuff goes bad, they're removed from it, and she's the one who takes control of that car and is like, we're going to get them because someone has to.
There's also a interesting moment when they're inspecting the I think it's like they kind of split up into 2 teams, and you've got Hudson and I think Vasquez, and they've got like the scanners, looking for signs of life and everything. And Ripley she's monitoring the video feeds and everything, or takes note of the type of facility that they're in, and then they ask about what kind of ammunition that they've got, and it occurs to her like, they cannot open fire in this place because it's, essentially it's a very volatile facility that they're in, and they're using weaponry that explodes on contact. And then it's up to Gorman to tell them while the Marines are just about to be in the shit, like, oh, by the way, stow your weapons because you can't use any of it. And then I'm assuming that Gorman is, it's up to him to plan this mission. So it's a real failure on his part to not know what type of environment they're going into and not choose the appropriate ammunition. So I think that speaks volumes as far as like what kind of person he is and how unprepared he is and how he's the wrong person for this job. And so I like that it occurs to Ripley, but doesn't occur to him like, oh, let's make sure we use the right type of weaponry in this situation. So
yeah, I can guarantee that's what it is because he doesn't tell them why they can't use their bullets.
Yeah,
he never goes, oh, you'll blow everything up. He just says, just get rid of them. Because I thought that was weird that they didn't know why they were being told that.
Well, yeah, and well, I mean, I think that's I'm not in the military, but I do like there's that moment where Apone is like, "But sir," and he goes, "No, collect magazines."
Yeah.
And it's a military thing is you just follow orders. You know you find out why later. Right now, it's not important, and so that's what he does. He goes, "All right, you heard the man. Give hand him over." But I love Gorman's reaction when Ripley picks up on that. And you're right. Thank God Ripley's there because Gorman is out of his depth. But the way he's just like, shit, like, and he doesn't know what to do. He kind of freezes up for a moment where he's like, and then he kind of really tentatively goes, hey, Pone, I need you to collect all magazines. And so, he doesn't know how to make that call. And when he makes the call, he probably doesn't do it in the best way. I do love that it doesn't matter because Vasquez always has a spare.
Yeah.
Because that's who she is. I love that. But yeah, you're right. Like he just tells them to do that. But again, I think that's great. That's really good writing on Cameron's part of like, how do you put these Marines at a disadvantage? And you take away their guns, symbolically. It's like they can't use those guns. Yeah. Right. Yeah. And then it's really smart too, is that Frost ends up collecting all the ammunition and he's one of the first ones taken out by the aliens.
Yeah.
And that ammunition goes boom. And now these guys are, these ultimate badasses are pretty worthless without their weapons.
Yeah. I like Frost's line. When he gets all the ammo, he's like, "Oh, thanks, Sarge."
Yeah.
He even knew he was going to die first after that.
Yeah.
Oh, in this act, I had a question because it sort of it was. I was trying to think my way through it with how many aliens there are.
Okay.
So we see a lab with dead and living facehuggers.
Okay.
So I'm assuming after they brought back the Newt's dad, they went back and maybe gathered some more eggs, and that's how all those aliens are in one location that far from the ship.
Yeah, it seems like there some time elapsed between Newt's family finding the nest or the old ship, and then the colony getting wiped out. It seems like there was time there because it was time enough for Ripley to go get an apartment and get a job. And so you imagine it's a month or two or something. And so they found it. The one guy gets the face hugger attached. They bring him back. They try to save him. They mentioned that it might have been him. They don't really, I don't know what his name is, but they mentioned like one of the guys dies, them trying to remove the face hugger. So you're right. Like, it seems like they've already gone down the route of like, oh, let's start collecting these things before stuff completely goes bad. And it would have to be because for then enough aliens to start building up over that time to take out everyone that quickly. Yeah. There's a part in there where the colony starts studying the aliens before everything goes bad.
Yeah, because I was trying to think that through, because if he was the one that died, then he wouldn't have been in that weird stage where he's still kind of himself until it pops out.
Yeah, they not knowing or not dissecting it as carefully as they do an Alien, they may have tried to just cut it off, and then the acid blood would have killed him in the process, maybe.
Okay. Yeah, I was just trying to think through how they got that many eggs, and
and
the queen got there, and like a lot has happened. It escalated quickly.
Yeah. There's and for me it was one of the deleted scenes, but for you guys it was probably in there. But there is a sign that says Hadley's Hope. Like, I guess they call that, it's like maybe a nickname or I guess official name for the town of this colony, and it says population 158. So I guess, at a certain point they do say there are over 100 aliens out there, or at least 100, people. Now, most of them would have been implanted with eggs, but certainly some of them would have just been outright killed. So,
well, yeah, and they show that they drug as many as they could to this nest to impregnate them, which is why now the Marines are dealing with so many of these guys.
Yeah. the military, like we just talked about, has been neutered in a sense without their ammunition, but they do a good job once they're able to like really open fire. They do a good job of taking out the aliens. Like, at a certain point, like they're taking them out left and right.
Oh yeah,
which I kind of think it's a little weird because when you think about the first movie, one alien takes out the entire crew. Now, granted, they are not military, but they do have some weapons in the first movie and everything. But they're only going up against one, and it's able to basically take out everyone except for Ripley. Here, it almost feels like the aliens have been weakened a little bit, just because we see them, I guess, individually, they don't put up as much of a fight as the one that we see, in the earlier movie. So I'm okay with that decision. Like it visually, it kind of goes to the decision to make this more of an action movie instead of a horror movie. That the kind of the difference in tone with the two movies, which I think is a really smart decision. Cameron himself even said, like, if the first movie is like a haunted house, this movie is like a roller coaster, which is kind of a good way to kind of think about it. Like, and it's got some of those same horror elements, but for the most part, it's a sci-fi action movie instead of that horror. So I'm okay with the individual aliens kind of not being as formidable as the one that we have earlier, but I don't know really what my final point on that is, but
I don't know. I think it's more about, instead of it being 6 truckers who have who have no
a flamethrower
training, who have no training and barely any weapons, taking out like going up against one creature that they know nothing about, to a whole team of military going up against a bunch of these. So I think that like that's that was part of the premise, is how you up the stakes on both sides. Is there's a lot more aliens, but this time the humans think they're prepared, and then what happens? But you're right. Like there are a couple times where the rifles, like you can see that, especially like towards the end when Ripley has one, how that rifle really can just take out an alien pretty quickly,
right? Which
is again why it's kind of smart that Cameron took that option away pretty early in the film, because if the Marines could have come out on a level playing field with their weapons, they probably could have taken out a bunch of these aliens a lot easier than they did, but circumstances and just the aliens' cunning, setting up their nest where they did. You kind of have to believe that was somewhat intentional, is what puts them at a disadvantage again.
I think once the Marines have basically made contact with the aliens and we see the aliens start to descend on them, I think visually, that is one of the best scenes. Certainly one of my favorite scenes I've ever watched for this podcast, if not, beyond that. Like when the alien, untangles itself and starts to uncoil, and I'm a sucker for, you've got a Marine in the foreground, and then just behind the character, like the alien starts to remove itself from the wall, like it was there the whole time and it's kind of camouflaged in the surroundings, and like that stuff. There's a scene like that in Alien where it's on the ship with Ripley, I think towards the end, and it's like kind of buried itself into the wall and like the cabling and ductwork and all that stuff, and you don't see it right away. So they've kind of mirrored that here, and you've just got a dozen of these aliens just all descending on these Marines, and it's, once that firefight begins and once that the horror starts, it's just unbelievable. And yeah, like I said, one of my favorite scenes in a movie that we've ever covered.
Well, it's great, and it's at this point, as I mentioned earlier, you as the audience have been waiting a while for this thing to kick into high gear. So, and when it does, it really does, creating this nest, this biomechanical nest that almost looks like an extension of the alien itself. and then taking away their weapons essentially, and then them just coming out from the walls. And I think one of the Marines even yells that of, they're coming from the walls.
Yeah.
And them starting to immediately just get completely decimated. It's a worthy payoff for your patience.
Yeah.
Totally.
Do we think they actually read the report? Because I mean, the alien in the first one, that was its main mode of operating. It was a lot of hiding within the structure and then picking off people. But it seems like they didn't pick up on that part.
Yeah. Depends.
Because in
if
the
that
first
was-
one, it's very stealthy and sort of zips in and out of piping and
Yeah.
all that other stuff. But here, wasn't there a part where they said they can't pick them up on infrared because they were looking through scopes? They were trying to
I might
figure
have missed
out.
that. I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah, I feel like there is a line like that.
So I know they're trying to figure it, and all they seem to have is that motion detector.
Yeah. And it never really occurs to them that they might be above or below them. It's,
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, even if they read the report, which you bring up a good point, I'm not sure they did. I think that, they've already done a sweep of the place. They've already found nothing. So their guards have started to come down, and they're just so overconfident that they can't imagine there being something that they can't handle. So that way, when the aliens attack, they're just not ready.
Yeah.
Because as far as I could tell, they just do a visual check because that little girl comes out after the all clear. Like they don't do like a life form scan or anything. Because Newt comes out once Ripley's there with them.
That's true.
After the all clear.
Yeah.
So they're really just half-assing it.
Well, I mean, we don't know like what kind of, because I feel like they only use the motion detectors, right? So, I mean, they don't show any sort of life form scan. So we don't even know if that's part of their arsenal.
Yeah, the closest thing is like the implants that the colonists have. That's how they find the nest.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because they have an implant. So I think
that's
that's
right. Yeah.
about as close to a life form scan as you can get. Because I don't think it doesn't seem like they can pick up the aliens until they're moving.
Right.
And it could be maybe just a simple matter of like a heat signature. Like maybe the aliens are cold-blooded and...
Yeah, it's hard to tell.
Yeah.
Because that's really the only device they seem to use is that motion detector. So maybe it's just the only one that really works. There's probably like 20 minutes of them trying different scanners.
In the extended edition?
Yeah. Hudson's just swearing and saying, man, I can't see them.
Yeah. They're in the walls, man.
Yeah. Hudson, by far, worst Marine I've ever seen on film. Well, that and the lieutenant. Or whatever.
Yeah, he's the worst. Once after the pandemonium, is kind of over, and Ripley has come in with the tank, for lack of a better word. She's driving away, and they hit enough stuff, and apparently Hicks says that the transaxle is broken, and she's just grinding metal. He does this weird, not weird. He does this really nice job of soothing Ripley, like kind of explaining her, like, you've gotten us out of it. You've done a good job. Like, we need to get out of here. But it's just a very soothing thing that he does with her. And a little bit later, he doesn't weigh in on whether or not to rescue the others, because I think it's Hudson says, I'm not going back in there. They're, basically talking about the life signs that they've picked up from their fellow Marines.
Yeah.
He says, Hudson doesn't want to go back. And then you've got Vasquez, who very much wants to go back for her. Drake, is one of the life signs that they pick up. Yeah. And then you've got Ripley is the one that has to say, there's no helping them now. They're going to be cocooned with the survivor that they found. And then Hudson doesn't really weigh in. I noticed, he kind of lets Ripley take that or make that decision, and kind of.
You mean Hicks?
Yeah. That's sorry.
Okay.
And then there's another scene a little bit later where he kind of does the same thing. Ripley suggests that they just need to get into orbit and nuke the entire place. And again, Hicks just follows Ripley's lead. And it's nice that Hicks doesn't try to be the one in charge. And you can tell once she says, well, you're corporal, so that puts you in charge. He's like, yeah, it does. And he's not excited.
He's reluctant. He's a reluctant leader. He doesn't. Yeah. He's a corporal. He didn't want that job.
And it kind of goes back to what you were saying earlier. Like they introduce Hicks, but they don't make a big deal about Hicks because he shouldn't be the leader of this mission. So
right.
And he definitely does not want to be leader. But
Well, Ripley pretty much becomes leader after that point.
Right.
Like she becomes a tactical wizard all of a sudden.
Yeah. But you're right. Like I love that about his character of like, yeah, he's just a soldier, and because of circumstances now he's the one technically in charge, and he's not equipped for that either. And so it's not until Ripley points it out that and you're right, like his reaction I think is just a great line reading by Michael Biehn of just being like, yeah, that's right. I guess it's me.
Yeah.
And then has to take charge. And then Burke gives, that little offhanded dig at him of like, he's just a grunt. No offense.
Yeah.
Which gives him a little bit of a goose to be like, okay, well, tough crap. Then we're going to do what Ripley and I decide, because you just lost any sort of voice you had in the chain of command. But yeah, I mean, I think it's an interesting take for the character of the guy who ends up having to come out up front with Ripley is somewhat unexpected.
Yeah, I think that was when I started not trusting Burke.
Oh, sure.
When he was against that plan.
Yeah, because he says like, well, there's a certain
there's a dollar value
of
this facility. Yeah.
Well, did anyone else? Sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, did anyone else start feeling like he was a synthetic? Because his reactions to this whole thing throughout were just sort of like nonchalant, and like I thought he'd be freaking out because he was a pencil pusher or something, but he was just so like robotic almost.
Oh, yeah. I never made that kind of. Never had that thought.
I think I had Ripley's mistrust of not replicants. Sure. You know what I mean?
Wrong
synthetics.
Show.
Yeah. So I just thought maybe he was one of those because he just seemed to be taking everything in stride.
Mm.
Yeah, I never even thought about that, but I will say that I think Paul Reiser is great in this because I think he does a great job of, especially if you've never seen the movie before, of really selling you on himself. Like he has a couple great introductory scenes where you're like, okay, he is a company guy, but he's the one company guy that we might be able to trust. And then, and then I'll be damned. Like, cause he's just a very likable, unassuming guy. And, I want to like him. And then you're right. Like this is the moment where you're like, okay, Burke, because even prior to that, he backs up Ripley with Gorman, and you go, see, like he's got her back. And then as soon as she says we're going to nuke the whole thing, it's the only way to be sure. And he's like, wait, we're not doing that. And I love that scene. It's one of my favorite scenes in the movie, and it's just dialogue. I love the back and forth there, because I love how resolute Ripley becomes so quickly. And he says, oh, there's a very specific dollar value that we can't, and she goes, they can bill me.
Yeah.
And where he's like, I don't think you or me or anyone here is qualified to make that call. And she goes, wrong. And then I love how Vasquez immediately steps up behind and goes, watch us. And I just love watching the tides turn there. And I love Ripley immediately like taking that position of power against Burke. I think it's awesome.
Yeah, I think they did a real good job with him, because from that moment on, anytime he wasn't on screen, I was wondering what he was up to.
Well, and see, that's how I felt about Bishop, because obviously with the first movie, it turns out that Ash is the, quote unquote villain of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
And so obviously they set it up in that kind of first act when when Ripley finds out that Bishop is a synthetic, and kind of lays that groundwork of like, she doesn't trust him, and she's not happy that Bishop is even there. And then kind of throughout this part of the movie, Bishop's not around a whole lot. Like I forget where he is in relation to how everything's playing out. Like I forget
sort
where.
Of give you like a red herring where he's inspecting the face hugger.
Yeah.
And saying how marvelous it is.
Totally.
So I think they're subtly letting the audience kind of think, well, Bishop's the one we have to worry about. So then you don't really pay attention to Burke. You know, you don't expect him to be the guy. So
probably because I thought Burke was a good point, synthetic. Yeah. So I kept wondering where Burke was.
Right.
Maybe Burke's one of those old models that get emotional.
Yeah, yeah.
I've never seen past this movie.
Okay.
But I always wonder if the company really wants those things, could they just send in like a fleet of bishops that, you know, the aliens can't grow inside of?
Sure. Yeah, create a...
Maybe.
And just gather eggs like that way.
See, and that's the movie that I want. And I like a lot of the Alien franchise, you know, Alien, Prometheus, Covenant, all that stuff. I like most of it. The movie that I want, though, is the Jurassic Park version where they've successfully brought a sample back and then it's here, it's on Earth, and it goes bad. Like, that's what I want. I want to see either the weaponized, you know, the version where they've successfully gotten the sample, they've begun weaponizing it, and then something goes wrong, you know? Because most of these movies we're on a planet, we've got it's either a rescue mission or whatever, and then by the end of it, we've, you know, nuked the facility, nuked the planet, you know, and it ends with them in orbit, you know. So yeah, that's the one I want. I want to see what happens when Burke, you know, gets this sample back to Earth or wherever.
Yeah, I'd like to kind of see the alien actually evolve out of one of the synthetics, maybe, and become like a Borg.
Yeah, yeah.
Because it can like take on like the host attributes, can it?
Yeah.
That's judging by the name, morph.
Yeah.
So I always thought that would be cool if it did find a way to sort of embed itself in the synthetic, because I mean it's sort of got a biological component to it ish. Whatever that milk is.
Yeah.
So that comment makes very clear that you have not watched any more than this one.
Okay.
Because all the hybrids they've come up with have just been sillier than the last. In 3, we get an alien dog hybrid. In 4, we get
like an aquatic,
like a 2/3 human hybrid. That's the silliest thing you've ever seen put in a movie. You get the alien predator hybrid in one of the AVP movies. That's how they've tried to up the ante and being like, well, we've seen aliens, but what if the alien was a dog? Well,
see, I'm into that stuff. That's what I want to see. Like, you know, in my movie where it's more like Jurassic Park where they come to Earth. I want to see the version that, you know, this alien has taken over a horse, you know, and like all kinds of other like crazy, you know.
No, there's certainly promise there. It could be really cool. Thus far, their attempts have not been cool, but I think the idea is sound. I think you're right. And you're also right that like the natural place for this to go is for Weyland-Yutani to finally get an alien. And, it just they never do. They just keep essentially trying to remake this with diminishing returns. It's like it's been done beautifully. Yeah. Now you got to do something else. It's so funny because as this movie wraps up, God, I love the way it ends, and then I just try not to think about how Alien 3 picks up because it just it ruins the whole thing.
Yeah, I kind of. Maybe they did this with the Alien vs. Predator, but I kind of always wanted to see what the alien planet looked like, and maybe it follows Travis, where it's got horse aliens and fish aliens and like a whole planet with a variety of versions of aliens. But I think their goal is
I don't think we ever see their planet.
Okay.
No.
That's weird.
Yeah.
Maybe that's just too much.
Well, and then we find out that, you know, they don't have a planet. They've been created by an android for some reason. Yeah. So.
Okay, then this makes perfect sense.
Hey,
yeah, you think they'd eventually take over a planet at least?
Yeah. Kind of what Prometheus is, or not Prometheus, Covenant.
It's kind of, sort of.
Yeah.
But do they just take the best and discard the rest? Is that their?
I think
is that how they evolve? Like there wouldn't be a variety.
I think whatever host
available.
They use the strengths of the host and kind of merge it with their kind of whatever the xenomorph kind of biology is from the start, because they all have that kind of similar, you know, big head, big elongated head, and then, you know.
Okay, so I always kind of pictured, you know, the xenomorph having eggs, and then that would have the current state xenomorph plus whatever it inhabited, right. So it'd keep building on itself.
Yeah.
And until you get something totally unrecognizable from what we know now. But I don't know. I just got down a rabbit hole of just thinking where this could go.
Yeah.
I was like, this is cool. What else could happen?
Yeah.
And I blame the queen for that.
Let's see. So where are we at?
Oh, there's the Shawshank Redemption scene. Where Bishop crawls through the tunnel. I assume he's crawling through a tunnel of feces.
A river of shit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a cool shot, though. It's creepy as hell.
Yeah.
Like when he's actually sort of crawling through that little pipe.
Yeah. I like
the lighting.
Yeah, just before he goes into the pipe or as he's getting into it, I like the dynamic shift with Ripley and Bishop, because he kind of totally wins her over when he's the one that volunteers to go to that antenna station, and you know, obviously he's the most suited for the job. And I like as he's getting into it, there's little small touches about the performance. Like Vasquez hands him the gun, and then she kind of, I think, looks away, and just Bishop kind of disregards the gun, like I don't need this, and he hands it back to Ripley. And just kind of gives it a look like guns, almost like so uncivilized, like an Obi-Wan line. And then like as they're sealing up the little tunnel that he's in, he just says, "Watch your fingers." Like it's a real, you know, throwaway line, but it just for some reason I really really like it. Just small little touches that make the Bishop character really great.
No, those are great points. And you mentioned earlier how they had some really nice red herring with you think he's the one who's going to bring the alien back to Earth at the orders of the company, and so he's the one you're leery of because he's the one Ripley is leery of. And then as it progresses, you start to get those little moments where you're like, okay, like he might be okay, because even when he volunteers to do this, he goes, "Listen, I may be synthetic, but I'm not stupid." You're like, okay, you know, like you're warming up to Bishop as Ripley is, which I think is great.
Right.
Although it always freaked me out, him crawling through that tunnel, because I was like, oh, that's just that to me. That's one of the most terrifying ideas in the movie. Like being in that tiny little tunnel with nowhere to go. Oh, I'm not claustrophobic, but that might change all that. Like that's so scary.
We did have a romantic moment with Ripley and Hicks showing her how to use the gun.
Oh, yeah.
Because I had a flashback to Terminator, and I was like, oh, geez, that's her grandson. For Terminator, I thought Bean was Sarah Connor's son, because I hadn't seen Terminator before.
Oh.
So when they were getting romantic, I was like, no, don't do that. So now I associate Michael Biehn with inappropriate relationships. So I immediately was like, okay, that's her grandson.
Well, thank goodness that's not where it went.
Yeah.
But that's my own issue.
Yeah.
Yes.
I got thrown off real early in Terminator. And
that was a fun episode.
But yeah, I like the little banter back and forth in that scene where he's showing her how to use the gun, and then she asks what this is, and he's like, "That's a grenade launch. You don't have to worry about that." And he's like, "Well, if you're gonna show me how to use it, show me how to use the whole thing."
Yeah.
And it comes in handy. Spoilers.
Yeah, there's a nice interplay with the two of them, and I really like what Michael Biehn does throughout the movie. There's little touches that, we see him kind of, they're all poring over the schematics of the place, and Newt is like trying to get a better look, and she goes over to Hicks, and he like just picks her up, puts her sits her on the table, and like once they wrap up that little powwow, like he picks her up and takes her with him. It's just nice little touches like that sell him as like he's a human. He's not this hard ass grunt that doesn't care about anything. He's not, I guess makes it a little bit different from the Kyle Reese character that he played, in Terminator. Not that he was like totally cold and uncaring, but it's just a nice subtle difference in the way he plays this soldier.
Well, yeah, and I do love the just the mutual respect between Hicks and Ripley, and it gets a little romantic, but they never crossed that line, which I like because this is not the time for it. So you can see the attraction, and you can see that they're very much on the same page and that they've got each other's backs, but that's as far as it ever goes. Just the simple thing of him giving her the tracker, being like, just in case. And, they joke, oh, it's not like we're engaged or anything, but that's as romantic as it ever gets. So it's all, it's relatively unspoken, and it's definitely never, it never progresses, but I think it's done just well enough that they've got this connection, but we're never going to get into the cheesy rom-com territory in this movie. It's just not the time or the place for it. But I really like that about it, of how from that very beginning, from when she calls him out as the new leader and they start getting on the same page, just to see how that progresses. And then even at the end, I love the moment where they're trying to escape and Newt's been taken. Sorry to jump ahead, but Ripley's like, "Don't go anywhere. We're not leaving." And it cuts to Hicks, who's now injured, where he's like, "We're not going anywhere." Yeah. Just, they've always got each other's back.
If I was Hicks, I'd be like, "Where was this when Drake was taken?"
Right? Yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing how with the Marines, Ripley's like, "There's nothing we can do for them." But as soon as it's Newt, it all changes. Bishop should have played back what she said, because he's synthetic. Been like, "Hey, remember this? There's nothing we can do for them."
Okay, so I guess we're at the point where Burke shows his true colors finally.
I think so, yeah. And
in a diabolical way.
Oh man, holy shit! That facehunger scene is legitimately terrifying. Especially when the second one pops up, like it kind of starts creeping on Newt, and effects wise, like I'm watching this thing and I was totally sucked in by this scene and forgot that these were not real creatures, and I have no idea how they filmed them or how they created them, like physically scurrying across, a table. And maybe they were little, not robots, but maybe they were animatronic and they were just built to, quickly scurry, and maybe they played with like the film speed and all that. But I was blown away with how they managed to create that moment.
Yeah.
Yeah, the part when its tail wraps around Ripley's neck, you can feel it.
Yeah.
And you're right. I had to remind myself, I'm like, no, that's just a piece of rubber that they molded. But it does it with such force that you can feel the muscle in that tail, even though it's not real.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. I like how that is what gets the host to open its mouth, like trying to gasp for breath. And then they stick their weird tube thing in there. Their birthing tube or whatever.
Proboscis.
Okay, take your word for it. That's made up, but sure. Yeah. Sure, Travis. Yeah. Yeah, that scene was by far one of my favorites. And that's saying something, because we still got some movie to go.
Well, and it's good because it's an intimate, scary scene as opposed to like a big action blowout.
Sure. Yeah.
Like he makes it work on a smaller scale here because it's a kid and Ripley and two little spiders in a room, but it's one of the most memorable and intense scenes in the movie.
Yeah. I just love when Burke flips the camera off.
Oh, yeah.
That's when it's over.
It's like,
that great giveaway. And it is weird because when they wake up and she reaches for the gun, it's like, well, we saw her put the gun there. So it's really, really diabolical, I guess, for him to have come into the room, remove the gun, dump over the tanks, I guess, with the two face huggers and just sit back and wait. So the plan of his, it seems a little far-fetched to me because I don't know how he expected them to fully make it back, I guess, to cryosleep without showing signs that they were, affected. I guess his plan was for the face huggers to implant them in their sleep, and then they would wake up with no knowledge of it and possibly board the ship later on and go into cryosleep without anyone knowing. But that's where it falls apart a little bit for me. I'm confused as far as how he thought it was going to play out, I guess.
Yeah, it's hard to tell how long it takes for that process where it falls off and dies.
Yeah, in the first film, I want to say it's like a day or two.
Yeah.
Something like that, yeah.
Something like that. So, once those face huggers go on, at that point, he can do what he wants with them. So, I don't know. I mean, he could sedate them, and then the face huggers fall off on their own, and they're sedated, and then he puts them in their beds, and then.
But I think wouldn't Hicks have said you're not bringing them on my ship with those things attached to their faces. We're just gonna unfortunately have to leave them here or kill them.
No, that's what I'm saying. Is he probably wouldn't do it until the face huggers came off.
Okay.
But also the Marines probably would still be like, we've got to get them back and get them help. I would imagine.
Yeah.
You're right. It doesn't get far enough for us to see all the intricacies of the plan, but
I guess that's his only window of opportunity. So he just takes it, and I guess maybe he figures he'll figure it out kind of.
Right.
Motion,
Yeah, because maybe he assumes, I'll be able to get them in, but he's not counting on, maybe Hicks would say, no, we can't bring them back, and then his whole plan goes to pot.
Or he sabotages the other Marines, and then it's just him and the synthetic guy at the end. You never know.
Mm-hmm. Well, that was what he said. That's what Ripley assumed he was going to do. Is
that's right. Yeah.
Sabotage their little sleep pods, and then they wouldn't make it back anyway. But
that's
again,
getting them further in, and then even getting them on. So I don't know.
But you're right. But that assumes that they would have allowed Ripley and Newt to be brought back in the first place.
Because even once when Kane was implanted in Alien, he wakes up from the thing falls off. He wakes up and goes to have breakfast with everybody, and then the chest bursting scene happens. So it's not very long between when the face hugger falls off to I guess when it hatches inside of them or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they know they only got a certain amount of time before
that
it
is
blows,
true. Yeah,
so.
yeah. I guess that. Yeah, that's a good point.
Okay.
All right. Let's see.
So he's then found out, and Act 3 commences with a whole lot of aliens coming at him. And where are they coming at him from? The MF and Sealand.
Yeah. This is one of my favorite. I mean, actually, it is my favorite sequence in the whole film. This is where a movie that's it's already been very action packed for the past since the first attack, however long that's been, where it really kicks into overdrive. And I just think the power going out and them barricading themselves into that room, sealing the room, and Hudson reading off the distance of the aliens, 10 meters, 9 meters, the suspense is palpable. It's so well done by Cameron. And then they're in the room, they can't be in the room. There's no way. And then we get that amazing shot of Hicks checking the roof or the ceiling and pushing that up and looking, and he shines the light, and we see what looks like just an army of aliens crawling your way. It's my favorite shot in the movie. I just think that is so well done. Like, it's so scary, it's so intense, and then it leads to this blowout action sequence.
Definitely, because I wasn't sure if they were coming from below or above until he saw them up in the ceiling tiles, I guess, the drop ceiling, and their movement in there was just so creepy.
Yeah, I love the way they scurry.
Almost like spiders.
Yeah.
And from this moment, the movie doesn't stop until the credits roll.
Right.
Like, it is breakneck speed from this attack until the very end, which I love as well. And this entire sequence, I just think it gives you everything you want in an aliens movie. And this is also where, the survivors numbers are dwindled considerably, because this is Hudson's last stand. This leads to Vasquez and Gorman's last stand. They all go out swinging, God bless them. But yeah, this is where
not Burke.
They not Burke. Burke doesn't go out swinging because he's a weasel.
Yeah.
But
kind of wish that his death was maybe shown a little bit more. I mean, they do the the alien snarl, and then like it looks like it shoots out its like smaller mouthpiece and then just cuts away. So you don't get a real satisfying end for Burke.
Yeah, you don't see a body. You don't see a blood splatter.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I know. Like you get that moment, you're like, all right, he's out. You get his terrified face, which is somewhat satisfying because he deserves it.
You know what they needed? They need the scene where, like in Raiders of the Lost Ark, where Indy gets the idol, he makes it across the chasm after Dr. Octopus has betrayed him, taken the whip and everything, and then Indy turns the corner and finds him where he's got like spikes coming through his back. Like you find, so like if Ripley and Hicks turn a corner and they find the dead body of Burke like just outside the doorway, like he almost made it out, and they get to see his dead body. That would have been kind of cool for me.
Yeah, I thought we were gonna see him in the pods with Newt. Like I thought they'd be next to each other, and maybe he wasn't worth saving, or she just said F him.
Yeah.
Because I thought he was gonna be a pod person since I didn't see him die.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
Oh, that would have been cool. Yeah, when she grabs Newt.
Like,
see him next to her, cocooned. Yeah, that'd be cool.
I like it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if she would have left him, but because I mean that's a pretty cold ass move on her part, but maybe she would have. I don't know.
Right.
Because I think she tries to stop the Marines from killing him outright.
Yes, she does.
Oh,
she's like, I
don't know if she'd leave him for that. No. What
does Hudson say? That's it. He's dog meat.
Yeah.
I love they're ready to just take him out right then and there. And I love that moment because Burke he's trying so hard to like stick to the story, but he's sweating and he's got sweat on his lip. He knows that he's been had. There's nothing he can do to weasel his way out of it, but he's still trying. He's like, oh, you're delusional. This is really sad. It's like, no one's buying.
Yeah, I think the cruelest part of his scheme was leaving the gun in view for them to see while they were trapped.
Mm-hmm.
They're like, hey, here's your gun. Come and get it. Oh, yeah, he can't. Yeah, Burke, he should have had a horrible death.
Yeah.
Very disappointed. Okay. So, there's a lot of chasing and some vents.
Yeah.
And there's this, like just huge shootout, just so many aliens. And the other thing is in this, I guess they only had maybe... it was like 6 or 8 alien suits for this movie. And just the way Cameron shoots it and edits it is like you just feel like there is just an endless supply of aliens coming their way, which I think is really well done as well. Because
they managed to blast like I think I was saying before, like they take out a lot of them, but there's still more and more. So it is the numbers, the overwhelming numbers are really nice.
Yeah, exactly.
I think that's where the nest comes in handy because you don't know if it's the alien or if it's just the walls. because it all blends together. So you get that feeling like she's surrounded, but with only, seeing maybe 3 for sure.
Right.
You just get that sense that she's surrounded by like 50 or something.
Can we talk about the alien queen?
Sure. Must have been a pretty big egg.
Oh,
Where the
man.
hell did she come from?
Yeah. That is just one of the coolest damn visuals. Like, you see that egg laying, that egg sac, and then it travels up and along the abdomen, and then you see, that like weird headpiece that doesn't initially look like anything. And then I love the idea that the head the head is protected by that big, like almost like a shield, like it has that hard, exoskeleton type headpiece that the head
it's like a beetle of some sort.
Kinda, yeah. Such a badass design, and for me it was a deleted scene, but I like that Hudson's the one that actually theorizes, like, maybe it's like a queen, like an ant, or something laying all these eggs, and so I like that it's just such a badass concept.
Yeah, that was one where, and that was a scene where I'm like, I'm pretty sure that this scene was not in the theatrical cut, where they set up the queen so much clearer.
Yeah.
In that conversation in the lab, where I think Ripley's the one who says, who's laying these eggs?
Right.
And then that's where Hudson goes, well, maybe it's like ants or bees, and like, and there's that back and forth. I'm like, I'm pretty sure that was not in the theatrical. I think in the theatrical, you just meet the queen and it's up to you to connect the dots yourself. Whereas in the extended, they do a much cleaner job of setting up the concept of the queen. But I think that this was a risk that I think Cameron took of how to up the ante from Alien. And it could have backfired, like, it's an alien, but it's bigger and it's badder and it's the queen. That could have maybe not worked. But I think that the logic is so sound because, you pick up threads from the movie you're handed and you figure out how to expand on those. I'm sure he said, hey, we saw a room full of eggs in Alien. Where'd those eggs come from? They had to come from somewhere. There's a queen laying the eggs. And when you draw that line, you go, yeah, that just makes sense. And now 30 years removed, you can't imagine there not being a queen, because it's just so effortlessly dovetailed into what came before. And then to still, to create a new design that still looks like it's part of the same family, but bigger, grander, scarier, crazier, it just works. And so I thought it was just another stroke of genius of how to take the pieces he was handed from Ridley Scott and to expand on the universe and create new mythology and make it all feel like it was always part of the plan.
I like that the alien, like the drones or the soldiers, like, or warriors, like, they can't make more aliens. They can't produce an egg which produces a chest burster. Like, they can only come from the eggs, which are only from the queen. Like, because before that, you don't know what happens if, like, the single alien in the first movie, you don't know, can it reproduce, or can it make more of itself, or implant people with, the embryos or whatever. But I like that this kind of answers, like, they can only come from the eggs and everything, which have the face huggers and all that. Like, I think it's a really clever way to make it, kind of makes it scarier in a way, like that there's this one creature that just giving birth to all these things almost. So, and I wonder, it'd be interesting to see, like, do males come along and fertilize all these eggs, or are they like completely fertilized once she produces them?
Right.
I
Are
love
they already ready?
Yeah. I do really like the insect like way that they treat the species, I guess.
Right. Unless you see Alien Covenant, which you should turn off halfway through. because in that one, the eggs are created by an android and a corpse for some reason that doesn't make any sense. Where I was like, what? You made eggs from a corpse of a human? That doesn't make any sense. How do you do that? You can't do that. But yeah, here it makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
Like, and to
biology.
use that analogy of like ants and bees of like, oh yeah, well, this is how their ecosystem works. That would make sense of how the aliens work. So I think it's really clever here. And just we mentioned at the very beginning, the effect of bringing that queen to life is so beautiful. I mean, it's a giant puppet, and it was 9 or 10 puppeteers that were all working different parts of her to make her work. But God, like it never reads as a puppet.
No.
She just lives and she breathes. And so, huge point for practical effects, because I see that queen and she is alive. And, had she a couple years later, they might've tried to do her in CG, and then, you never know. Like Alien 3, the dog alien is off in CG and it doesn't always work. Yeah, like I love the design of her, and I love how she's brought to life, and I love what a threat she is. I love how pissed she gets when Ripley takes out her kids.
Yeah, you can feel the anger, like that. The performance of, like you're saying, that puppet. It is really, really amazing, especially like because the queen is intelligent and Ripley threatens the eggs, and she signals her warriors to like back off. Mm-hmm. I don't know if she does that telepathically or if it's like a pheromone thing, like some animals, or
I think it was a noise she made.
Yeah, I didn't remember if she like hissed or did anything like that. So, but I love the concept of them being able to communicate. She tells them to back off, and then just the fact that she picks up on Ripley's like intention of like, you make a move and I'm going to toast all these eggs, is really clever. So, and of course, I love the decision on Ripley's part just to like, say screw it.
I can't let these live. Right.
Yeah.
I love.
Sorry, go.
That's good. Like, so I love, like at the very beginning, we talked about the deleted scene with Ripley finding out that her daughter has already lived her life and passed on in the time that she was asleep. And then, of course, Newt becomes that surrogate daughter for her. And in the end, Newt gets taken. That's the one person that Ripley is not leaving without. This gives her a chance to be there for the daughter, the new daughter, unlike she couldn't be there for her other one. And she comes face to face with this queen who has countless offspring. And I just love that the movie basically amounts to a mother versus a mother. Yeah. A maternal instinct versus another maternal instinct. I think that's kind of a great way to bring it all together at the end.
Man, definitely.
Yeah.
Because you could sense the tension. It was like two mothers like protecting their own.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
And then Ripley shoots the queen right in the baby maker.
Yeah.
That was badass when it detached from that sack, though.
So it's so creepy and gross and awesome. Yeah.
That was
just whoever did the production design and whoever had to create all that goop that's all over that nest.
Yeah.
I just, for years, you just buy it as real, being like, oh yeah, like it's alien goop. But then as an adult, I go, God, someone had to create that. Someone had to create that weird mucus that is keeping Newt up against the wall. Like that's man-made, but it feels so real and organic and gross. I'm like, God, like kudos to them for just creating this world that just feels real.
Yeah, I've always loved the production design on these movies, and it's quite impressive, yeah.
And allegedly, I've not been able to confirm this, but the place where they shot this final, well, not final, but like nearly final showdown between Ripley and the Queen, where Ripley comes across the Queen for the first time, allegedly that is the same place that was used for Axis chemicals in Batman '89.
Oh, that makes sense. Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah. That's what IMDb says.
Okay.
You never know.
Well, Because I read that a lot of this was done in like Pinewood, and I guess maybe it wouldn't make sense for them to build all that on a stage, so they probably did go to a location somewhere in the UK. So yeah.
Yeah, and then dressed it up.
Yeah, I could see that.
Mm-hmm.
Going back to your comment about how the puppet seemed real of the Queen, I thought that really showed in the part with the elevators, because it almost, I had this feeling that the Queen was smiling when the other elevator came down. Like she tilted her head and looked, and it was almost like if she was a evil human, she would have had a smirk. Like it was just like, I got the sense that she was like, oh yeah, now it's on again. So it's weird that a non-talking, unusual looking creature can give me that kind of sense.
Yeah, and without eyes, like it's just a mouth, right? And they can, and that thing can emote.
Yeah. It was just the tilt of the head that was like, oh geez.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, it threw me when it realized, like, okay, my prey is in an elevator. I'm going to get in this other elevator, and I understand that if I, push this button, it's going to take me there. Like I was not prepared for, they understand how elevators work now. But when you think they're not just animals, they are like beings, they are sentient like that. I wasn't really prepared for that fully. So
yeah, luckily I picked the right floor.
There you go. Yeah.
All right, so we're on the platform.
Are we ready for Mecha Ripley versus Alien Queen?
Well, right before that, I've got to say, like, I love that, she, damn you, Bishop.
Yeah.
And he still got her back. She just didn't know it. So then she feels real bad later.
Yeah.
But like, I love the fake out and it grabs her and away we go. Planet blows up with the alien queen. Of course, she blows up with the planet.
Right. Movie's over.
And the movie's done. Good wins out. And I love the fake ending. I think that is great. I don't know how many movies prior to this have done that, where the movie is quote unquote over. They've won. And you get that like last little moment between Ripley and Bishop where Ripley, she's overcome her prejudice of synthetics.
Yeah.
And she gives Bishop some props and says, you did great. And you're like, oh, great. We're wrapping this baby up just in time for that tail to come through Bishop. And you're like, oh, crap. We're not done. I just love it. I love it because it's such a great fake out. It's so well done.
Well, Alien kind of wraps up the same way because Ripley makes it onto like the escape pod or whatever, the lifeboat that she's basically on. And that's when she finds, that Alien has stowed aboard and is hiding in the, in the craft with her, so they kind of do the same thing, but it is, you're right. It's so awesome when they're looking up at the, I guess it's the landing gear, and she just kind of like descends out of it and like just arms and legs, creeping out. It's really cool.
Yeah, I think if I hadn't already known about the iconic shot of Ripley in the suit, it would have caught me off guard. But I was like, okay, I haven't seen it yet. Where the hell is it?
Exactly. Yeah.
So yeah, I could see that working a lot better if I was unaware.
Yeah, 30 years of pop culture ruined it for you. It's okay. Same thing happened to me with Psycho.
Geez, spoilers. Yeah.
I knew that when she got into that shower, it was gonna go bad. I knew it. So I hear you.
Yeah, I'm sure it's the same way with Star Wars and finding out who Luke's daddy is.
Right. Exactly.
Probably been ruined for generations now because it's so like just part of the culture. So yeah, but yeah, I love the shot of the tail going through Milky Bishop.
Oh yeah.
And just like that liquid is just so I don't know.
It's unsettling. Yeah.
Yeah. That's a good word for it, because you're so used to seeing one thing, but now you're seeing something else. And then when it just rips him in half, awesome.
Yeah.
Love that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It looks really good.
It does, right.
Yeah.
Like even when he's on the ground, it still looks really good. And he's just like intestine-ish thing. And
yeah. They do a good job of like disguising, his, I guess, lower body, like burying it in the floor or whatever. they do a really good, really convincing job, with that effect, I guess.
So we get the iconic shot, the door opening.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, actually, I should take it back. There's a line that I now know Mrs. Weasley stole from this movie, where Ripley says, "Get away from her, you bitch." And Mrs. Weasley uses that in the last Harry Potter film.
That's right.
Where she goes, "Get away from my daughter, you bitch."
I forgot about that.
So did I, yeah.
So now I know J.K. Rowling loved aliens.
Well, I mean, that's another mother, like, protecting her
it matched
child.
up perfectly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like "Get away from her, you bitch" might be the most iconic line in the whole thing. Yeah. Is that one you since you had just seen the movie for the first time, was that a line you already knew, or no? Were you surprised to hear it?
No, I didn't know that. I knew about the Game Over one before that.
Okay, so maybe Game Over wins, but yeah, like I always think about Scream 2, like they have that conversation in Scream 2 about sequels, and he goes, "Oh, but aliens is historic. Stay away from her, you bitch." I believe the line is "Get away from her, you bitch." This is film class, right? Yeah. So, yeah, it's just an iconic moment, and again, like a fist pump moment. I didn't see this in the theater in 1986, but I wish I had, because I just imagine the crowd would have went wild.
Oh yeah.
Oh, as soon as that door opened, that's when I went like, "Oh yeah."
Like beautifully shot, Cameron. Yeah, like backlit robot door raising, zoom into her face, "Get away from her, you bitch!" Like, he milks that scene for all that it's worth, and it's glorious.
I love that it puts her, like, in terms of scale, like they're closer to being equal, and then you've got this, insect-like, very organic-looking alien creature versus this, robotic, mechanical, very, like, hard edges and very non-organic, in shape and everything. And just that playing off each other, the juxtaposition there is really awesome.
Yeah, like the little mini torch.
Yeah.
When the mouth was coming at her.
That power loader is pretty incredible. So I almost wonder if that's like, is that the kernel that planted the seed in Cameron's mind for like Avatar with the mesh suits that they wear and that kind of thing. So I kind of think it probably is.
Of course, it's gotta be.
And it's so it makes sense. Like in a future, like I could see that. Of course we'll have like power suits or mech kind of suits that. Or even just as simple as using it for as a forklift, So.
And I'm assuming that's all from like animation from Japan with like the mech.
Could be. I mean,
sort of genre.
Yeah. He talks about it a little bit in the behind the scenes stuff where he kind of came up with the idea, but yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if there's some
those are pretty
inspiration.
Old.
Yeah.
Like, the only one I could think of is Gundam, and I think that's fairly old, like early 80s, late 70s probably, or something. Yeah. Okay. So did any of you think, where she opens up the cargo displacing, I don't know what you call it. It's like a trap, basically.
The airlock.
The airlock that's on the ground. When the mech fell on top of the Queen and she was climbing out, I thought the doorway was going to be eaten away by the acid, and that's why she was running. Like I didn't because there had to be blood after the giant squish, the bug squish.
True, yeah.
So that's where my head went. I got thrown off by her having another hatch within there to pull on. So I was thinking a totally different thing, and it took me off guard. I wasn't expecting it to be so dramatic, I guess.
Yeah. I love that it's not as simple as like kicking it. That the Queen takes her with her. And I love that it's like
that tail was a bitch that whole fight.
Yeah. Well, and I will say, I mean, just to back it up, like Cameron takes full advantage of the blood acid as an obstacle. Like I feel like in future installments, that's something it hasn't been forgotten about, but it's no longer really an issue.
Yeah.
But Cameron's like, that's that's really makes it hard to kill them up close because you're putting yourself in danger. And he really uses that for all it's worth throughout the movie with with Drake, with Hicks, with Vasquez, like
Hudson even gets hit with some.
Yeah, so like that, that really shows how even in death, how formidable these aliens are. Yeah. So I never made the connection at the end there, but just throughout the movie, I was like, wow, like that acid blood is a real problem.
Mm-hmm.
That's probably why I thought that, because they go out of their way to show it like dripping through the station while they're inspecting and like leaving giant holes. Like when they're first inspecting the
when
colony.
They first get there,
there's like giant dripping metal holes everywhere.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think that was the moment they're like, oh, maybe that crazy lady wasn't so crazy. Because that's got to be the craziest part of her story, is that they have acid blood.
Well, I think one of them, even says like acid blood, or like they reference that. I think
it's
like,
Burke. Burke says it.
Okay, yeah.
Well, Burke says it when they see it, like when they're doing the. They're looking through the complex, and they find that burnt hole. And Burke goes, acid for blood.
Yeah, so that's probably why I was thinking that was going to be the next step, just because it was beating in my head how nasty that blood is. Then I didn't think there'd be a hatch inside, or a handle inside the hatch. That would have been bogus if she accidentally sucked Newt out.
I know.
Yeah, it's a little
damn.
Yeah, I almost, because it's been long enough since I've seen it. I almost expected Newt to get sucked in there, and for Ripley to have to catch her, like catch her arm as she's being sucked out. I thought that's where it was going, but just one last like threat,
Yeah,
Bishop's
torso took care of it.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
I guess. Do we have any last notes for the overall movie before we get into our wrap up?
I'd just like to ask Ripley to start wearing a bra every once in a while.
In space, no one can.
Oh, I guess gravity wouldn't take hold. So I guess 0G. I don't know. I'm just being stupid. It's just weird. They always have her like in her underpants and that tank top.
Yeah.
She's just free balling there.
Yeah, it is odd that you'd have to essentially like what does it matter what you wear into cryosleep?
There's other people in t-shirts like the other Marine ladies.
Oh, okay.
There's one in a t-shirt. I think it's just weird.
Yeah.
But it wasn't like that way in the first one too.
Yep.
So whatever.
Yep.
But yeah, overall, I mean, good on you, Cameron. It's a tall task to take on.
For sure.
So I don't know if it was as iconic back then, but I would imagine it was, pretty popular. So it had to be a ballsy move to take on a sequel for a fairly, famous movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When sequels weren't as, ubiquitous.
Yeah, and to have to live up to Ridley Scott, who was already a legend by then, and then make a sequel that very smartly shifts genre a bit while still keeping some of the terrifying parts of what was set up and going bigger, but still giving you what you liked about the first, expanding the mythology. Like he stepped up and he hits it out of the park. I feel like, and created, I think, one of the greatest sequels of all time. And I mentioned the Scream 2 scene because movie geeks, when they talk about, has any sequel ever lived up to the original? Any sequel ever surpassed the original? Aliens is always in the conversation, whether you agree or not.
Sure.
It's one that's always brought up of like, well, Aliens is better. And even if you go, well, I don't think it's better, but it's damn good. That still says a lot.
Yeah, that and Empire?
Yeah,
Empire,
Godfather 2.
Empire, Aliens, Godfather 2.
Yeah.
Always like, and T2 is another one that gets thrown out there. Those are always the examples. And the Santa Claus 2, obviously.
I don't think I realized Cameron did 2 of those.
Yeah.
So he's got 2 of the rare feats under his belt.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
And now the pressure's on for Avatar, dude.
Avatar 9. It's
yeah.
Yeah, have you seen the Sigourney Weaver's IMDb?
Oh,
It's got Avatar 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
Jeez.
Like,
oh
it's
my
like
God.
it's insane. It's like all the way out to like 2025.
What? It's like, didn't she die in the first movie?
Yeah, this is
She
weird.
did. Yeah.
Huh.
That's weird.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just noticed that when I clicked on her IMDb, and it was like, you know, in the top of the list, and there's like 4 or 5 more Avatar movies
Yeah.
listed there.
It's
It's
crazy.
like, that seems pretty
Presumptuous.
ballsy to put out there.
Yeah. Yeah.
How long's it been since the first one?
Right.
Again,
Shit,
Sigourney's going to be like 80.
That was like 2009.
Yeah.
Yeah.
December of
Coming
09.
up on coming up on 10 years.
I don't know, maybe she's going to be like that General Akbar, whatever his name is from Star Wars. She's just going to be a CG character.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll also say, like, this movie in 1986, this was a big summer movie. It opened in July. So
Okay.
big summer action extravaganza. And it delivers, I think, on all that. But Sigourney Weaver was nominated for Best Actress in 1986 because of this movie. And so for a movie like this to get nomination for Best Actress, like, that says a lot just
Yeah,
about
it's huge.
you know, I mean, her work in it, about the perception of the film, about how it exceeded expectations. And she didn't win, sadly, but I think, like, I mean, it's well deserved. She gives an amazing performance. The movie, she carries the movie on her back. But I just think it's so great that she could get nominated for Best Actress for Aliens.
Yeah, that's amazing.
All right. So that is Aliens. Now we will go ahead and let's do most villainous first.
This planet, these people, they are nothing to me.
You were made to be ruled.
The universe's power! You unstoppable power! Come to me, son of Jor-El! Kneel before Zod! And I am that force! I am that power!
In the end, you will always kneel.
Kneel before your master!
Can we throw out Burke first? Get him out of the way. I mean, that's the no-brainer one.
Which moment, though?
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah. So Andy, you want to kick us off with your most villainous moment?
Oh, so it's a moment.
It can be a moment. It can be a
moment.
We're pretty loose on that. Doesn't
I
have
already
to
know
I mean,
his. He already said Ripley's fault. She woke up.
How
called
dare she?
herself.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with the moment of Burke turning off that monitor when Ripley is trying for help. If we're looking for just a moment, I mean, obviously all of Burke's actions, I think,
Yeah, his motivation is
are completely up for for the most villainous. But if we're picking a moment, that's it, where he dooms them and then turns that off without a second thought. And we didn't mention earlier, but I love after he's exposed when Ripley says, "I don't know who's worse, us or them," because we don't see them screwing each other over for a percentage.
Yeah.
That was a great line. Okay.
Patrick?
I think I'm going to go with the Colonel and taking away their bullets, because he strictly did it because he was embarrassed of not planning correctly. Like, he could have had them come back, and he just kept them going forward.
That's true. Yeah, they could have pulled out.
I thought that too. I was like, pull them out, reassess, rearm, and go back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was like he was.
I don't know if it's
embarrassed.
villainous. It's just selfish, really.
Yeah, it's. What's the?
But he knowingly threw them into a horrible situation.
Yeah. I'm gonna go kind of Burke, but I'll go one step further, I guess. And it's really the Weyland Yutani Corporation. Like, Burke is a corporate cowboy, but he was, he's working off of orders from this corporation, and they were it's the same corporation that, gave Ash orders in the first movie to bring back a sample, make sure that the sample survives. It's not an ethical company. So I'll kind of go,
they're like Disney.
Yeah.
The comments of our guests are not necessarily those of Okay. Yeah, I mean, they're the puppet master of Burke's puppet.
Yeah.
Okay. So heroic, I mean,
I believe there's a hero in all of us
I just finally know what I have to do.
that keeps us honest,
I'm here to fight for truth and justice in the American way.
gives us strength,
You will give the people of Earth an ideal to strive towards.
makes us noble.
And I know in my heart that it's right.
we got the obvious choice of heroic moment since we just talked about it. But do we have any others?
I'd back it up to when Ripley takes control of that tank to go get the Marines.
Nice.
Yeah.
Where Gorman freezes up and doesn't know how to react, and Ripley steps up, and that's when she really takes the lead and earns everyone's respect in the meantime. So like, this is not her place at this moment. This is a military operation, but she knows what's the right thing to do, and she does it.
Yeah, throughout the movie, Ellen Ripley she keeps going back. She makes the decision to go back to the planet for, like we've said, once she finds out that there are people there, their families, their kids, and she, like you said, she goes back to pull the Marines out of there. She goes back to save Newt. Like, she consistently going into the heart of darkness, to help others. So yeah, it's her through and through, like throughout the movie. There's also, I've got another tiny little moment that it's so small, but when they're pulling out of, let me think, they've just wrecked the tank thing. Gorman has been knocked out, knocked unconscious, and they've got him on a stretcher. I'm not sure if the dropship has blown up yet or not. This might be right before the dropship, explodes. But they're all carrying Gorman on a stretcher, and Newt has her hands on the stretcher, as if her helping lift this stretcher is making any bit of difference, But we've all been kids and are helping our dad out with something, and you help carry something that it does not matter if your tiny little hands are helping support this weight, but just the notion that she wants to help out, I found really, really touching. And I think it was I don't know if that was a decision on Cameron's part, hey, Carrie, put your, help carry the stretcher because this guy's hurt, or if it's just, Carrie Henn is on set and she's, in this scene and doesn't know, how else to perform, and she just does it, out automatically. I mean, I don't know what the decision was there, but I just found that small little touch, and it's really easy to miss, but I really liked it.
That's such a good point, because there's another moment, it's right after the dropship blows up, and they kind of come up with a plan of, we're going to seal these tunnels. We're going to set up in the extended edition, we're going to set up the sentries. We're going to do this. It's right after Hudson brings up the schematics, and then it cuts to them prepping, and it shows them collecting food and bringing it to where they all are. And Newt is carrying handfuls of food. Yeah. And I thought the same thing. I was like, Newt is helping where she can. God bless her.
Yeah, Newt's the one that guides them through that maze of despair. So. Yeah. I like that she wasn't that scene where she's like, left. Oh, wait, no, this way. And then she's like, are you sure? She's like, yeah. So she wasn't just, perfect. It was like, wait, she got to get her bearings, because there was a whole lot going on during that sequence. Yeah, I think mine was, I got to give a shout out to Bishop, because, without his help of, agreeing to stay nearby, getting the alignment to get the ship, to fly it down, and then save Newt at the end. I mean, I give him some props.
For sure, yeah.
Especially since he's got to go up against the stereotype he's dealing with Ripley. So I want to give him some credit there. He's got to be the weirdest character, though, because he's barely in the movie. But he plays a huge role.
I was surprised at how little he's in there for as big of a presence as I think I've always thought Bishop has, I
always thought it was kind of weird, or not always, but throughout the movie I thought it was kind of weird. I was like, man, if he's synthetic, why do they make him look so creepy?
I guess that's the point. He looks great, too. Because he looks off. Like, it's that uncanny valley of, like, this guy's not entirely human.
Yeah. Yeah, you don't know if he's synthetic or just, like, socially awkward.
Yeah.
But I love that. I love how they subvert your expectations by making him creepy, because we, like Ripley, in theory, we should remember what happened last time with someone who we did trust. And so, it puts us all on edge, and we spend the whole time with Ripley being like, what is this guy up to? And picking someone who looks kind of creepy like Lance Henriksen, I think, was really smart with that.
And he doesn't play the sweetest roles historically.
Right.
Yeah. So that also plays into his advantage. Cool.
Patrick, you want to do the Rotten Tomatoes score?
Yeah, let me get my trusty tomato pen out. Okay. So basically what we're going to do is just take a guess at what the critics said percentage-wise and what the audience thought percentage-wise, and see which one of us is more aligned with what is reality as it is with Rotten Tomatoes. So,
because as we know, they are the authority on
that's right.
rating movies.
They're the Siskel and Ebert of this generation.
Yeah.
So, Travis, I'll let you go first for the your audience pick.
I think 92%.
I guess I should have the guest go first. I'm a horrible host, I guess.
It's okay. It's my first time. So we're guessing what we think these are?
Yeah. And then I'll actually look up Rotten Tomatoes and see how close we are.
So we're guessing.
This is audience.
Audience first.
Yep.
I mean, 92 is a good guess. I'm gonna do Price is Right. I'm gonna go 93.
Son of a bitch.
$1. Okay. Yeah, I'm gonna say like 98.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean
I thought this was really good, and like you've been saying, it's a top sequel that people bring out. So I'm gonna say it's really up there. And then Travis, as far as critics go.
I'm thinking 88, just under the. Okay. I don't think we're in the 90s with critics.
Okay. And Andy.
Oh, critics, I'll go 92, and I'm going to up my audience to 95. You talked me into it. I don't know anyone who doesn't like this movie.
Right? Yeah.
So 5% for weirdos who don't, and then everyone else.
Okay, you took my critic one. I was thinking 92.
It's all right.
It's just because of what you said, she was nominated. So that would tell me critics thought highly of it.
Yeah.
So I'll say 94, just to be an ass. Okay, let's see. What does Rotten Tomatoes say? Wish I could do a drum roll, but I can't. Okay. Damn. Okay. So critics.
Let's do audience first.
Well, audience, yeah. Audience is a 94%. So technically, Travis wins without going over. You should have kept your 93%.
Oh, that's right. You went
Curses, yeah. I went from 93 to 95. If you average my two guests, I nailed it.
And the critics said 98%.
Wow.
So I literally had it reversed.
Yeah.
So who wins that one? I win that one, technically. 94. It's closest to 98, so...
Man.
The big loser's Andy. He was so close on each one of those.
And based on the rules, we can't ever have you back on the show.
Yep.
So sorry.
It's been fun.
That's where you play that. Wah, wah, wah.
Well, all right. How about our overall thoughts and ratings? And we'll do this out of 5 stars, and you can give you can either give a rating first and then just some kind of a overall wrap up to justify it, or vice versa. However you just your final thoughts on the movie and your rating, Andy.
All right. I mean, obviously, if you've been paying attention, I love this movie. I think it's I do think it is one of the best sequels ever made. I think it is one of the best action movies ever made. Just period. I think for me, everything about it works. The character work is fantastic, especially for Ripley, but even for the supporting characters. This movie, I think, stands above all of the others in the franchise because it's not just Ripley and a bunch of others. It's Ripley and a bunch of other characters that we get to know and we understand and we care about and we want to spend time with. The action is great. The world building is great. The effects are great. Everything for me, it's Cameron at the height of his powers, firing on all cylinders, and I think he delivers everything you would want in an Aliens movie, and that's why I think every other movie since this in the franchise has had a really hard time living up to it. There's no denying the first and second movies are both classics in their own right. Regardless of which one you would put slightly ahead of the other, they're both amazing. And then everyone else has been trying to match those ever since, and it just hasn't come together. And I think it's because this is just so strong. So yeah, for me, I love it. I wouldn't change a thing. I would go with 5 out of 5.
Very cool.
I am shocked. Okay, I guess I'll go next. Being this my first viewing, I didn't realize I was watching an extended version of the film. So my one knock against it was that it seemed a bit long. Because it was 2.5 hours. But now that I know that I just was an idiot and watched the wrong version, even with it being 2.5 hours, I was thoroughly captivated and it kept my attention. I wasn't looking at my watch being like, okay, geez, come on, let's move it. Mm-hmm. I thought it was a bit long only after I had finished it and saw what time it was. And I was like, okay, that's a bit crazy. They could have cut some things here and there, like sort of the explaining sections of the movie. But now it seems like most of that was deleted anyway. So, but just with the characters, I loved. The action was great, and like that damn beeping of the motion sensor kept me looking around, like below, above, to the side. Like I kept trying to find where it was coming from. So I thought that was a really good touch. And overall, it was just a fun watch, and I'd definitely watch it again. So yeah, I'm going to go with a 5 as well.
Phew. I was worried. Because for your first time, I'm like, oh God, I hope it holds up. I hope I'm not crazy. No, that's great.
I mean, granted, Starship Troopers is a 6 out of 5.
Oh, well,
yeah,
that's fine. I'm okay with that.
How about you, Travis?
I don't know what you guys are talking about because this movie is the worst. No, I think I took note of little things that both of you guys said there. With Andy, you were talking about like the performances and everything, and it's like it struck me that this is a movie where one of the characters is a little kid, and sometimes in movies that can be a hindrance, and it's like they introduce a kid here. It's a bratty kid, and the performance is really terrible or whatever, but Carrie Henn as Newt is just she does this weird performance where you can tell like she's seen some things, and she kind of has a vacant expression a lot of the time, and in a good way, like she's almost desensitized, and she knows like, oh well, so I guess we're not getting out of here, are we? that's okay, Ripley. It's not your fault. You know, just very like measured, and her performance is just it's captivating. And that's not to say that, I mean, everyone's performance in this movie is pretty incredible. Like you guys have said, the action and Patrick, what you were talking about with that the beeping. It's like I noticed that too. It's like once that beeping starts, I wasn't sure if it's sound that they've added in like as part of the score, like a pulsating, you know, like a trigger to like make you think, okay, something's coming, you know. But then
in real life, it seems impractical to have something making that much racket.
right. But it adds to that tenseness, and it does build when they're, you know, you don't know what's around the corner or whatever. So this movie does it is a perfect follow up to a movie like Alien, and like Andy, like you said earlier, it builds on the mythology. It adds things to the overall Alien story that Ridley Scott, you know, began and everything. And I'm right there with you guys. This is an easy 5 for me. I'm glad I watched all the deleted scenes and everything after the fact. So I'm glad that I at least got the same story you guys did, just slightly out of order. But I could definitely see going with the theatrical version next time, just to save myself like 15 minutes, because I don't know that the stuff with her daughter really, I mean, it informs her decision as far as, and it does give that nice juxtaposition later on in the movie where it is mother versus mother, you know, in the nest or whatever. But you sort
of get that reaction from her when she finds out that her daughter's like dead at 60 whatever years old.
Yeah.
And she said she would,
or something.
Yeah. And she said she was going to be back for like 11th or 12th birthday or something.
Yeah.
Oh. So you get more feel than just, I had a daughter.
Yeah.
Which is what I think you saw.
Yeah.
I don't even think they acknowledge Ripley's daughter in the theatrical.
When they're both
Newt,
underneath
right?
the bed.
Like, she says it. She says it to Newt.
She does say she had a daughter, and she's not. I forget how she words it.
Yeah, Newt goes, "Oh, she's dead."
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. See, that's me not remembering.
Sure.
What's in which version anymore, but yeah.
You're gonna have to bust out the VHS tape. I assume you still have it.
I do not. I think maybe my sister still does, but it's still on the Blu-ray. But I'm like, if I'm watching Aliens, I'm watching all of Aliens. I'm good with it. Yeah, it's interesting. But you bring up such a good point. Is usually in these movies where it's like, oh, and then here's a kid. I'm like, oh, come on. But I've never been bothered by Newt. You know, and especially because she's not the focus of the movie. She's just another ingredient.
Yeah.
I like that we meet her by shooting at her.
Right.
Yeah.
But to be fair, she scurries pretty quick.
She's quick. She also delivers another one of the most famous lines in the whole movie.
Yeah.
They mostly come at night. Mostly.
It's
so good.
Was that in her magpie den?
No, that
ventilation,
was
it's right after the dropship crashes.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's right, because it's night. That's right.
Yeah. She's like, we should go inside because they mostly come at night.
Mostly.
But is it ever really daylight on that planet?
That's one of my notes early on in the movie was like, why don't they wait to start this mission in the daytime? And then it occurred to me like, oh, it is daytime. This planet just always looks like shit. Probably because they haven't terraformed it. They haven't fully finished terraforming. So maybe just the atmosphere isn't like, you know, it doesn't have night and day like we, you know.
Yeah, I was picturing like Star Trek where it instantaneously turns into a green lush planet.
Yeah.
That magical
Genesis
rocket
device.
Yeah.
But another smart move by Cameron of having those colonists be terraforming, and that way the air is breathable, so you don't have your entire cast in suits with their faces covered the whole time.
Yeah.
Like in the original film, when they go out exploring, they've got to be in the full spacesuits, and Cameron's like, no, like I want to be able to see my actors.
Yeah, I
so
forgot about
guess
that.
what?
Yeah.
Now they can breathe.
But it did take away a moment like in Total Recall where their faces explode.
Right.
And goes, so, give and take.
I think that'll do it for Aliens. Andy, why don't you tell us where, a little bit about your shows and where everyone can find you.
Thanks. Again, thank you guys for letting me talk about this movie. I'm so glad that this one was up for grabs because as you can tell, I'm a big fan. But yeah, I spend all my free time talking about nerdy things on the internet. It's all I do. So that's real fun. What I spend most of my time with is my Batman/DC podcast, Holy BatCast. So you can check that out at holybatcast.com, or you can just search for it. But I also do a movie show called Real Fans for Real Movies, or RF4RM. And I do a Disney movie show called Disorder Every Disney Film, where we're reviewing every Disney animated movie in order. So we started with Snow White, and most recently we just got to Lady and the Tramp, which is number 15. So you can check out all those. You can just go to rf4rm.com, and that's where all those shows get posted. Or you can just search for them wherever you found this show, because they all go to the same place.
All right, very cool. Nerd question for you on that Disney one.
Mm-hmm.
Are you going to include Pixar before Pixar got taken in by Disney?
So no. So
okay.
I am very much a rule follower. So my rule is it's every Disney animated feature. Pixar movies are not Disney animated features.
Okay.
They're Pixar films. So it's a separate category. And so people are like, well, what about the direct-to-video sequels? I'm like, nope, those were not produced. They were not produced by Walt Disney Animation Studios.
Okay.
They do not count. There's like an official list, and that's we're going by the official list. However, we think that once we get up to date on the Disney animated features, then we're going to do the same with the Pixar films, starting at Toy Story and then going in order.
Okay. Yeah, just curious because that gets kind of weird sometimes.
Yeah, exactly. So no.
So you're only dealing with the vault list, I guess.
Right. More or less, yeah.
The Disney vault. That's such the weirdest concept.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, we're gonna lock these away until 5 years later, and then you'll pay for it again.
And you'll buy it again.
Yeah.
Exactly.
They're just waiting for technology to advance so that they can say, well, 4K HDR is now a thing on iTunes, so I guess we got to crack into the vault with, Little Mermaid on 4K HDR.
But then we talk about, like, there are a couple that, like, never went in the vault, like Dumbo and Alice in Wonderland, like some of the less beloved ones. They never got put in the vault, and it's like, if you were Dumbo, you're going to feel kind of left out because it's like everyone else is important enough to go into the vault, but not you. You stay out there. You're always available.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah, and I just want to say I cannot recommend Holy BatCast enough. It is one of my favorite podcasts. I listen to it every week, except for when you guys talk about like an animated movie that I haven't watched yet. Those I tend to I try to I don't always get to the animated stuff, animated movies right away, so those I tend to let simmer and get to when I can. But I love your show. I love the dynamic that you and Jamie have, and it's for me it's like the definitive Batman podcast. Like I've listened to enough now that I think what you guys are doing is up there with the best. So
well, thank you for
saying that. Yeah,
thank you. I really do appreciate that. So spoilers, you should watch Scooby-Doo and Batman the Brave and the Bold like today.
Really.
You should do that immediately if you want to enjoy the next episode.
Okay.
And if you don't, like, as long as you download the episode, I don't care if you listen.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter to me. Live your life. I'm not going to tell you how to live your life.
Click.
Just give me that click, and I'm fine. It amounts to just so many theoretical dollars that I never see. So
yeah.
Imaginary internet money.
Yeah.
No, it's all good. I do appreciate that. Thank you. We have a lot of fun doing it. So I'm glad it's appreciated.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
you should have said Twitter, right? Like on Twitter, you can follow BatCast. On Twitter, on Instagram, on YouTube, Holy BatCast on all of those.
Very cool. All right. So next up, I don't know if it's possible to get the bends while watching movies, but we're gonna go to another Alien film, Howard the Duck. So we're gonna go from one end to another real quick. This is gonna hurt people.
This might be the first time we give a movie a 10 out of 5.
Yeah. I don't know. Is there a rating for alien duck nudity?
I was gonna say it at least earns bonus points for duck boobs,
right?
Always.
Yeah. So we're gonna run one end of the spectrum to the other when it comes to alien movies. This is gonna be fun, people.
Oh, yeah.
Hold on.
Yeah. Until then, you can email us at reelcomicheroes@gmail.com. You can let us know what your feelings are on duck nudity. You can hit us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Real Comic Heroes. Join our Facebook group, the Real Comic Heroes League of Citizens. We can talk about duck boobs over there as well. If you leave us a nice review on iTunes, we would love to share that on a future episode. So, and then for a personal plug, you can follow my new podcast at Watchmen Minute on Twitter, which, as of this recording, you can listen to our pilot episode where we are talking about the trailer for Watchmen. And then on February 19th, we will be posting Minute 1 of our little adventure of covering Watchmen 1 minute at a time. So look for that. And
for those of you listening, when he says we,
yeah,
it doesn't include me.
That's true. I'm cheating on Patrick with with another podcaster.
Oh, so if you want to listen to Travis's infidelity, please tune in.
Andy, can't thank you enough for coming on. I'm really glad that we got this to work out and got you on the show.
Yeah, me too. Thank you for thanks again for the invite. And God, when did we first talk about this? Like 6 months ago?
Yeah,
Thank you for the reminders. Because
yeah.
I'm like, oh yeah, I remember getting a list of movies and randomly picking one. I remember that. Yeah. So eventually we made that happen.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Anything else?
Now let's go into the cryo chamber.
Let's do it. Stay safe out there, citizens.
Across the sea of stars lies another world, a world almost exactly like ours. This is where he lives. He's 27 years old, single but searching. Favorite sports, windsurfing and Aikido. Favorite pastimes, cigars and sex. He has everything except fulfillment. And then one night, it happens.
Hey, good buddy, are you home?
He has a very sudden midlife crisis. He lands in Cleveland.
You do know why you were sent to me?
Listen to me, small visitor. I can explain how you got here.
Maybe you're here for some greater purpose, some cosmic cause.
Here, he's forced to reassess his career goals.
You went to med school?
To explore new relationships. To redefine his self-image.
I'm sorry, we don't allow pets on the premises.
To adjust to a changing lifestyle.
All right, pull it out!
Until he discovers just who he really is.
Oh, no.
A duck in big trouble.
That's a duck, man!
Howard the Duck, trapped in a world he never made. Coming from George Lucas, a Willard Hike film, a Gloria Katz production.